and so this is a whole different experience for me in that sense. Hopefully my cursor won't flicker like this the whole time. That's kind of annoying. So here's the map of where I went. And hopefully as I remember, we'll kind of flip back and forth to it so you can see kind of the places I went. But the general itinerary was Cameroon, Benin, Togo, Ghana, and Sierra Leone. And these are places all in West Africa that I chose because there weren't any like UN warnings saying that I was going to necessarily get killed while I was there. The temperatures were only going to be in like the mid, like 150s or something like that. And by my judgment, they weren't too well touristed. I wanted to go places that other people don't go very often, and so these kind of fit that criteria. So getting started, this kind of starts out in Cameroon. Cameroon is a French-speaking country that was originally, it was obviously African for a long time, and then it became a German property and then a French property, and that's kind of persisted ever since World War I. So, it's independent now, but the French language still persists. And everywhere you go in West Africa, people are drinking Guinness, and so you'll kind of see that as a theme throughout this. My first night there, I ended up getting, I met a half African girl on the airplane that introduced me to a family, and so she took me out to their family's little bar, which was just in the alley next to their little shack in the middle of the city, and there was a sign there in the bar that says no credit, so you got to pay for your beer. So I thought that was interesting. For anyone that was here for my China trip, we rode on Qingqi motorcycles, which is a Chinese brand, and it was surprising for me on my first day to see Qingqi motorcycles there in Cameroon. And it was really interesting because as time went on, the China connection was really, really clear everywhere I went, and so we'll probably come back to that at some point. But so this is in the capital of Douala, and this was it's kind of, it's a pretty modern city by all things African anyway. You've got traffic, and you've got buildings and banks and ATMs and things like that, so it's kind of a good place to get started. And I'd like to actually ask a favor of someone. I had printed out a little page of notes that I left on the printer right on the other side of that wall. If someone doesn't mind grabbing it, that'd be awesome. Thanks. It should. Pass the snacks, folks.
Thank you. I know, Armin.
This is kind of one of the main food staples that I ate while I was out there. This is a man serving suya. Suya is grilled meats of various origins. I'm not sure, oftentimes what it was. I think this was beef and possibly lamb. Thank you. Of meat? It's anybody's guess. And I actually asked the question a couple times, and people just kind of gave me looks like, don't ask. It's the meat. We eat this part. It's not exactly soy sauce, but it's very similar, and it's by a brand called Maggi. You guys know this? Yeah. Okay. It was everywhere, and those guys have a lock on Africa. I don't know where it originates from, but it's everywhere. Well, so it reminded me of my favorite food in China, which was just grilled little pieces of meat on the side of the road. It was often served by Muslim guys, and it was with chili pepper and cumin on it, right? And it's pretty much the exact same thing here. And this is really what I survived on a lot of the time. Cameroon had pretty good food, but a lot of the food throughout West Africa just got really old really quickly. However, the pineapples. Unreal. I've never had a pineapple to match what I've had out there. No question. I like this. This is something I've also seen in India, but this is real truth in advertising here. If you're going to sell rat poison, it's good to show that you can kill the rats with it, right? That's fair, right? I have no idea what the Jack Bauer connection is, but I thought that was interesting. One thing that we just don't do in America is repair things. So this guy on the left in the blue, his name is Bobby, and so the girl that I met in the first city kind of passed me off from friend to friend. And so Bobby here, he was working for the oil refinery in Limbe, which is on the coast, and this is the one oil refinery in Cameroon. He's about my age, and so it was kind of cool connecting with this guy because he was kind of, he had a good job, he had a lot of money for a kid his age, and so he had 2 cell phones, and they were both pretty nice. And so, but what they do in Africa is they repair things when they're broken, and we just throw them away and buy new ones. And so here he is in the shop talking with his buddies, getting his phone fixed. And this is Limbe itself.
Adam, where did you stay throughout this day?
So that's interesting. I just stayed down the street from this building here. Come on in, guys. The beer's behind you. The chips and snacks are up here, and there's veggies in the back there. You haven't missed any snakes. You didn't miss one dead rat, so I wanted to let you see that. So what did I say? In this town, actually, Bobby set me up with a hotel, and at his choice, he picked the nicest hotel in town, which wasn't anything as nice as this building, but it was pretty nice. It had a pool and everything, and a disco and everything. And that posed a problem because this morning I walked out of the hotel and started just walking up the street. Bobby was going to come and get me in an hour or two, so I started walking, and I didn't realize it and didn't think, but I had apparently left the village that I was staying in and crossed into another one. And I knew that you're supposed to talk with village chiefs when you do such a thing, but it was like my second day. I hadn't thought this through and gotten into the rhythm of it. So I just started walking. And I took one picture, I think, before something happened. And this was the picture. I thought it interesting. This is actually a really nice house here in Africa. And so what happened was, around the time that I got to this house, and I snuck this photo later on, I was called over from the side of the road over to a house, and a couple of guys were like, who are you and what are you doing here? And I'm like, oh, well, I'm just a tourist, just kind of cruising along, and like I've got my camera in a bag, and I'm just like, just hanging out. And they're like, well, you're in village such and such. I'm like, okay. And they're like, did you check in with the chief? I'm like, oh, no, I didn't think about that part. Is the chief around? Maybe we could go and do that. And they're like, yeah, we'll get the chief, sure. And so they all pull out their mobile phones, and they start calling, and all right. Well, the chief's not here, but the chairman's around. So we're going to have you talk with the chairman, and then everything will be fine. All right, so they took me to this house that's in the picture here. On the porch, there was a chair and a man sitting in it. And I don't know if you can see him, but he was sitting there by the time I got there. And so he's sitting there in the chair, and he says, well, so why are you here? And I'm like, just to see your country and walk around. And he's like, well, you didn't check in with me. And I'm like, that's why I'm here right now. He's like, okay, well, so what's your mission here? Why are you here? I'm like, well, I just want to learn and see, and do you like that? And he's like, what's in your bag? And I'm like, oh, well, it's my camera. And he's like, so you're taking pictures. I'm like, well, I'm not at the moment, but yes, I intend to take pictures. And he's like, okay. He's like, well, what do you plan to do with these pictures? I'm like, well, I want to share them with people that won't come here. He's like, so you're a journalist. No, I'm just a tourist, and I just kind of want to take some pictures. And really what he ended up getting towards was he said, well, I don't like the idea that you're taking these pictures, because what people do when they come to Africa is they take pictures of the things that we're not proud of. They take the pictures of us like naked and like poor, and we are not these things. And so I don't want you to like give people a skewed view of what our country is all about. I found that interesting, and at the time I was really nervous because here this guy was really kind of grilling me. And I found it interesting later realizing that the picture that I had just taken right before that was of like the nicest house around. And then, yeah, there is poverty there. That's just how it is. And so in the end he said, well, so because I'm the chief and I'm in charge here, and you have essentially broken the law by coming here and taking pictures without my permission, I'm not going to let you leave my porch until you pay some money. Well, how much money? And so he put the price down. It was about $100 American. And it's like, oh, well, that's a lot more than I thought, and that's a lot more than I traveled with in my pocket over the course of a day. And he established that price by saying, well, where are you staying tonight? And I said the name of the hotel. He said, oh, so you have money, because Bobby put me up at the nice hotel. So that's why I like to stay at the lower end hotels when I go to these places. I don't want to skew their image of me. And so in the end, I ended up having to pay the guy $50 to let me get off his porch, and learned a long lesson on that you got to check in with the chiefs before you cruise around in the village. So from that point on, I was a lot better about these things. And that really came into play in Sierra Leone, which we may or may not get to in this story. These are bird nests that I see everywhere. I don't know what kind of birds they are, but they like make these like spheres in the trees and like cruise around in these things. It's super cool.
So do you think if you had checked in with them, they would have been okay with you taking pictures?
It's possible, and I learned a lot more like just kind of tricks like over time. Like had I checked in with him, I probably could have like taken the power in the situation and kind of like turned it to my direction. If I had just told him that my money was back in the hotel, let's go back to the hotel and settle it there, I could have had the hotel people kind of work on my behalf to kind of work it out with me and those things. But you live and learn. So what happened was when Bobby caught wind of this, when he finally picked me up, this is down at Down Beach, which is just down from Up Beach, just in the town down from that street. When Bobby picked me up, he's like, okay, and he made some phone calls, and what ended up happening is he connected me with his friend Guy, who was friends with the girl that had met me in the airport, and there was this entire network of people essentially that came out of the woodwork and started saying, okay, well, I'm going to help you and make sure that you don't wind up in a situation like that again. So for the entire duration of my couple weeks in this country, I had a partner. And for the most time, it was this guy named Guy, who you'll meet in right here. And so this is Guy. And so Guy is like, I don't know, he's in his mid-20s, I guess, maybe early 20s, a little immature, really into the ladies. Everywhere we walked, every time he would see a good-looking girl, he would like walk behind her and he would just go like this, and like, the figure, and like he was shy on the one hand, but on the other hand, he wasn't afraid to like just get destroyed every time. So he'd always go and try and hit on the girls, and he would always get turned down. But that said, he did every time we went to, it seemed like there was a girl that he knew. So he, I think, tries a lot and has some success. So here we are hanging out in his friend Janine's college dormitory. So this is in another town not far from Limbe, and so I'm hanging out with Guy now, and so he's making fried plantains for us for dinner in the dorm room of Janine. This is Janine here. So I don't know, you can imagine your college dorm room, and the conditions there are just a little bit different. It was just like a bed on the floor, concrete walls, a little cubby hole, a really big cockroach in the bathroom. Like, yeah, it was just kind of kind of like that. So Guy was able to borrow a car for a day, and he took us around the town in that, and I just kind of found it interesting that American colors were flown everywhere in Cameroon. This is cruising. Well, no. It's a French-speaking country, and my French is really, really terrible. But it was enough for me to kind of get by with strangers. And like with Guy and Janine, they both spoke enough English that between both languages it worked. And certainly by the end of the trip, Guy and I were getting pretty tired of each other, and the language barrier was getting pretty frustrating. But on the whole, it worked out, and I was able to manage.
So do they speak French to each other, or what language do they speak at
home? Oh, yes, that's interesting. So yeah, French is the lingua franca. But there's tribal languages everywhere you go. So it depended on who was talking to whom, but there were a lot of tribal languages being spoken. And those were things that I would never be able to sound out. So this is hanging out near Guy's parents' house. Or no, pardon me, just Guy's house. This is it says call box, and this is kind of what I would call a call girl. She's not there at the moment, but you'll see more of these later. These are people that just sit at a table that they make, and they have their own cell phone, and they'll just charge you to make a phone call if you don't have your own cell phone. And it actually turns out to be a really lucrative business, and we'll get to that later on. This is a bad picture, but I just like this. No pigeon on campus. We were on the college campus, and you're just not allowed to speak pigeon. Pigeon is the kind of like I don't know how to say it, like kind of bastardized English that's like, kind of uses some French words and some English words. And so, if you're going to say, I'm going to go there, or you say, I did go there, things like that. And so it's like, it's not the kind of thing you're supposed to speak in college. So there's no pigeon on campus. I found it funny, just like the American references that they would throw into things, probably not realizing this was just like a little restaurant on the side of the road, Dirty South. Like, I don't think they really know what that means or anything. But so this is another one of Guy's friends. She was actually voted Cameroon's, or at least the city's top models. They had a little top model TV show, and she was on it, and so she won. And so here we are hanging out at the graffiti over in the park.
That's a block?
No, block party.
Oh.
Yeah. This is Kumba. Kumba has a dirt problem. Kumba is on the end of a long, miserable dirt road we traveled by bush taxi, and I think I'll explain bush taxis in a minute, but as you can imagine, traveling on a road like this with the windows open, you're going to be breathing stuff like this a lot. And so it was kind of after like a good 8-hour ride on this that I kind of felt like, okay, now I'm getting into the Africa feeling, like sweating with people. I got a tan so much that my feet really haven't seen much sun since I got back, and I still have the tan lines for my sandals. Yeah, and that was back in April. So yeah, I definitely did. Kumba was filthy, and we spent our evenings just like hanging on the side of this road with all the dirt being kicked up by the cars, having drinks and just enjoying like the heat and the weather and everything. And I just kind of got into the African rhythm there. I thought it was kind of cool. Yeah. I wish Jen was here, because I don't know if anyone saw Jen Pierce's pictures. She had a few on Facebook of her trip to Cameroon, and she was always really marveling at the fact that everywhere you went, there were cars like this, destroyed and flipped upside down everywhere you went. Someone just isn't figuring out the scrap metal business in this country, and in the other countries they do. So when they figure out that Cameroon is just like this wealth of scrap metal, like it's going to be a big deal. But right now, everywhere you go, there's just cars like this, junked and flipped everywhere. I don't know. No one really wanted to talk about that. That was kind of like they weren't proud of the fact that there were junk cars everywhere. So it was just kind of like, yeah, don't worry about it. I think it's really cool that in this world people still play with like little wheels with a stick, and so you can see a lot of pictures of those, because I just think that's the coolest thing. And someday if I have children, I'm gonna give them a stick and a wheel, and they're gonna be happy. This is a little shop just pasted all over with football posters. Everywhere you went, there were posters of football. There were posters of the players and their mothers, the players and their mothers and their houses and their cars, the airplanes that they've flown in, like all sorts of ridiculous things. It was really funny.
Going back to the wheel thing, was that just like he's hitting the wheel with the
Oh,
stick
yeah.
to make
So
it roll?
they'll get it rolling like this, and then he'll take a stick and just kind of knock it to keep it rolling, and they'll just run through the neighborhood doing that. This is back in the Kumba, dirty, dirty town. This guy here is Mr. Elvis. Before we met him, I saw his name in the registry in the hotel, and I told the lady in French, I'm like, I think someone is playing a joke on you because Elvis is dead. And she just gave me this look, and then sure enough, a minute later, Guy and I are walking down the street, and I just hear this guy go, "Hello!" And we look, and I'm like, "Who's saying hello?" And Guy seemed to know this guy, and he's like, "Adam, this is Elvis." Okay, so Elvis is a character. This guy was just nuts. He was the biggest like teddy bear ball of energy you've ever met, and like everything was. It's massive. It's incredible, Adam. Oh, you would not believe it. And his favorite thing, he goes, Adam, you know what I love? I love women. I love women. Now he's married and he has a child that he just had 2 days ago. I got an email from him and he says, but you know what I love the most? Buttocks. Buttocks. I just love them. They drive me mad, Adam. They drive me mad. And so this guy was just a character to be cruising around with because he was always like, whatever it was the biggest deal, and he was so excited about it. And so he had some really cool ideas of like things to see. And so he's the one that took us out here to this like lake in the middle of the jungle where a couple local kids were hanging out and jumping into the water. And so this kid's like doing a flip off a cliff here. And it was a ton of fun hanging out with Elvis.
Do you jump?
I didn't know. I hadn't planned for it, and I don't know. I probably should have. It was really nice. This is just over in the jungle there too. Just kind of cool things growing, and it was dense. I mean, this is jungle by all means of jungle. Just cool patterns in the leaves and stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, Arp and Sinha. So this is one of Elvis's ideas was to take me to what he called the Clando cars. And so I'm going to go over to the map really quick. If you notice that Cameroon borders on Nigeria, and so we're in this town. We're near Limbe. I had mentioned that earlier. And so we started kind of going west from Limbe out to where this. Oh man, this is moving really slow. But this point is, this is the border right here to Nigeria, so it's just a short little boat trip to get there. So what these guys are doing is this is kind of a loading point to transport goods to and from Nigeria. And the way they do it, this was early evening before like a lot of the cars had filled up. And so right now you've got kind of just people milling about with some empty cars and people selling pineapple and snacks and things like that, just hanging out to do that. Here's a guy kind of pulling in, just being super cool. People definitely have coolness down in Africa, there's no question. So this is kind of how it goes. Now this is a car that's pretty full, so the whole back is actually looking kind of level, but they customize the cars so that the back wheels are jacked way up high on super big springs so that they can fill them with an inhuman amount of gear and then load it down to about level and then make the trips, with as much stuff as they can cram in it. Here's a guy selling some bread to someone driving one of those Clando cars, and here's on the back. These are gigantic drums and someone's luggage. Here's you can see a car with a jacked up back in the background there. Another one. Kids selling bananas while you do it. And so people are really down on child labor in the third world, and I think it's a really interesting topic because you can keep kids out of making the clothes that you and I wear, but if you do that, they're going to be selling bananas, and you'll see that in a lot of pictures here. That's just what people are doing. Like, if you need money to stay alive, that's kind of the fate that you have. This guy was just modeling for me. He was really into the camera. This kid was schlepping stuff. This guy, and this is his house and family behind him. Yeah, this guy was chatting it up with me, and he wanted to take his picture. This guy is doing what's really common out there. So cheap clothing will be transported from other countries to Africa, usually sold by like the pound. And so what this guy's doing, there's a lot of different ways of shelling out this clothing once it's purchased. Some people's method is kind of the auctioneer. And so this guy's standing up on something, and he's pulling out one shirt at a time, and he's saying, 5 cents, 5 cents, who wants to buy it for 5? And when someone raises their hand, he's like, I already want it for 10. And if someone does it, then he sells it to them. And if not, well, then he gets it for 5. And so I just thought that was kind of a fun way of getting rid of clothing. Here's kind of your typical shops along the side of a street. These are all Chinese-made goods. You got your rubber boots, you got your shoes and sandals. You're gonna see a lot of sandals in these pictures. Oh, there's your Maggie again. Is it Maggie or Maggie? Maggie. So this is big in China and India, huh?
Yeah.
Crazy. Maggie everywhere. But yeah, I just found it fascinating that like all the goods came from China. This guy was hanging out in the market, and like he's selling like, I don't know, little nuts and bolts or something, and he's leaning against his table doing like exercises like this. I'm like, all right, well, this guy's gonna love it if I pay some attention to him. And so I go, you've got big muscles. He's like, yeah, I got big muscles. And so he let me take his picture. And then everyone in the area thought it was funny. So this kid was making fun of him in the background. Here's another Suya stop. This is back in Kumba, if I remember right. So we got that filthy road, just knocking dirt all over our food. They're cooking but grilled plantains here too. So this was where I specifically asked what kind of meat this is, and they didn't want to answer that. But the plantains on the grill is a really, really tasty thing. I've never had that. I had a little kind of flu fever type of thing in Togo, but I don't think it was necessarily food related. Yeah. So this is an interesting concoction that Guy turned me on to. This is called Gigi Coco. And this is mixing your Guinness and your Coca-Cola in a glass and doing it together. And I thought this was sacrilege, and I was like, if I tell my friends back at home that I'm putting Coke in my beer, they're going to think I'm nuts. And he's like, just try it, you'll see. And yeah, it's delicious. It's you wouldn't think it, but these are two tastes that actually are made for each other. And I don't know that I'd order it like that every time, but they work together. It's really amazing.
Now, does it have to be 120 degrees for you to do that, or is that?
Yeah, right.
It could be. That could have something to do with it, yeah. Yeah, maybe here it's just not quite the same. So Guy started, it was interesting, Guy started taking, at first it was kind of this friction thing where he just didn't understand what I wanted to do on a given day. I just didn't want plans. I didn't want to do anything. I just wanted to walk around and see things, just see what came up, and just watch. And at first this just didn't make sense to Guy, and then he started seeing the patterns of the questions that I would ask, and pretty soon he started understanding why someone might want to ask the questions about the things that he takes for granted every day. And so this is kind of the very beginning of it, where he was like, well, can I try your camera? I'm like, absolutely. Go to town. I'll teach you how to use this thing. And so this is one of his first shots, and it gets to the point where I can't remember which shots are his and which shots are mine. And I wouldn't say he's a great photographer, but he definitely started getting to the point where he'd sometimes take my little camera bag and the camera, and he would come up and say that he was a French tourist, and ask people questions, and they would answer questions, and he started understanding, okay, well, this is cool to find out about the things that we don't even realize. How do you make a bag out of tires? How does that work, kind of thing? And so it was really cool.
So did you pay him to go with you? Or
No, so he's trained as an electrician, but was having trouble finding work recently, and he's also been doing chauffeur work essentially for a politician there. The politician was traveling for business for a couple months, so he was without work. So he had nothing to do. And so it kind of went without saying. We never had to discuss it. I was in charge of his hotel rooms and food the whole time. And then I ended up buying him a few things, a piece of clothing here, sunglasses there, that kind of thing. And so in the end, I never paid him anything, but it was, he lived very well for a while there. He got all the beer he wanted and all the snacks and everything, so he had a really cool vacation. So we met this Rastafarian guy as we were waiting for a train in some middle of nowhere town, and he really wanted to show us some Rastafarian stuff. So he said, if you buy me a little bit of salt and a little bit of oil for cooking, I'll show you a Rastafarian ritual or something. And so the ritual consisted of him kneeling here at the foot of his bed and sprinkling some powder. I don't even think I have the next picture. Yeah, he sprinkled some powder in that little calabash there, and that was it. And it's all right, cool. All right, see you later. This is how I stayed drunk in Africa. This is Gold Bond whiskey, and it's kind of hard. It's in little plastic bags. It's like your ketchup packets full of whiskey. And I'll tell you what, it's genius because you can fit them in your pockets, you can stuff them in your backpack. They're rugged plastic. It's a lot cooler than the airplane bottles.
Are they diluted?
No, it's straight whiskey. It's 43% alcohol, it says. So I wouldn't say it was good whiskey, but it did the trick.
Did you bring any back?
Yeah, I brought a bunch back. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Some of you know that my friends and I, we have this thing where the gig is that you're supposed to bring back the bum liquor that you find in the countries you go to. So this I had to bring back for all my friends. So this guy's selling plantain chips, or not plantain. What's it called? It's like fufu. This is the roots of cassava plant. These white. And you'll see them in a couple more pictures, I think. And they fry these up and eat them as chips. And they're absolutely tasteless and plain and just full of oil because they're fried. But this is what you got when you're in Africa. This kid's selling them in the market. Just pretty eyes, pretty face. Selling bananas. Okay, so here we get to start the game of voodoo or food-oo. Any guesses? So voodoo is things that are killed and used for voodoo ritual, and food-oo is stuff that, people eat, but I don't know that I'd want to eat it.
Voodoo.
Voodoo? Yeah?
Voodoo.
All right, we got one for voodoo. This is actually food-oo. These are dried, smoked animal parts. I'm not sure what. Hannah, you got fish on the right there and other things on the left there. Voodoo or food-oo? This is definitely food. And it's actually not that new. You've got like ginger, peppers, this is probably salt, nuts, things like that. Kind of your herbs and spice. You got your onions and garlic over here. And these are smoked fish back here. You'll see those in more detail later on. Another kid with a wheel. They're just so cool. So we got stuck in this town. Like we tried to get on a train that never came, and then we got on a motorcycle that took us through just about the most harrowing like experience ever. He like first of all when the motorcycle rider picked us up, like he was just everything, all his hair was red, and I was like, I thought maybe this was like a birth anomaly or something, and he was like making fun of me. He's like, haha, red hair, and I'm like, dude, that's like he might be self-conscious, like chill out, you know. And then I realized later why. It was because he had not gone the main road from city A to city B. We rode on that road for about a minute, and then suddenly he just veered off into the jungle, and we're going down this path that's about this wide, but just loose red dirt all the way through. And so we're just covered in this stuff, and it was this grueling ride. And eventually we paralleled a train track where there were these metal spikes sticking up on the right-hand side, and the train tracks on the left-hand side. And it was about, you know, a 12, 14-inch like space that we're riding along. So it was like we're squeezing, all three of us on a motorcycle, you know, squeezing really tight like this. And this was like several-hour ride. This is in the middle of that trip. And by the time we finally got to the city we were going to, Guy just exclaimed, he's like, "Ne jamais, jamais, never again am I going to do this." He's like, by train only. He's like, no more motorcycles. But for me, I was energized. I thought this is Africa. This is why I come out here to do this stuff, you know. When I come home and like, you know, get in a nice, you know, Volkswagen again, it's like, that's easy, it's chill. I want to be tortured for a little while. This is how we finally got to his mom's place at the very tail end of the trip. This was a bush taxi that on the very back said "deliver me," and so I guess this may be a good opportunity to kind of start to introduce. Yeah. So this is the way to introduce the bush taxis. Bush taxis are the coolest way of getting from A to B, and maybe when gas gets expensive enough, we'll start to do that out here. What it is someone just figures out that they'll drive point A to point B all day long. So let's say park and ride on Mercer Island to here, and that's just the route they hang. But they'll only drive it when there's enough people in the car that's full. And so they just hang out at the park and ride, and you just know that you go to the park and ride, and you know, there's a set price. Everyone just knows what the price is, and you give that much money, and then you get in the car, and when it's full, you all go. And so you have to be kind of chill about time, you know, like something that we're a little, you know, uptight about here, but out there they don't really care. And so so they get from point A to point B, but they also cram just about, you know, the whole village into the van at a given time. And so so this van was probably built with probably 2 or 3 chairs or benches in back. They probably ripped it out and put 4 or 5 in, and they're cramming what comfortably would fit maybe 4 people. They're probably cramming about 6 hip to hip in there. And then of course you've got all the things you can pile up on top and in the very back, and there were always, every time without fail, chickens on the floor. And in Sierra Leone, my buddy and I just called it the chicken check. It was like by the time the car started, you just listen and, all right, chickens, check. There they are. So this is on the way into Guy's family's house. Just a smaller village a little further north. So this point we're in Nkong. So we're getting a little further north in Cameroon. This is my hotel, so just to give you guys an idea of the high-class establishments that I was staying at out there. This one was definitely not lovely, and it looked out over a nice garbage dump, and there was a very questionable transaction going on with a woman in the hallway as I was entering that evening. So yeah, just not the most wonderful places to stay, but in my mind, it's worth it. This was right outside Guy's parents' house. And this is his family's house right there. So we hung out here for an evening and just kind of met the family and all the babies and that kind of stuff. It was pretty cool. And this is just down from there. This is where everyone was doing the dishes. So yeah, it's kind of surprising I didn't get sick, but this is how they do it. This guy is the future tennis champion of Nkong. Everyone was saying, like, this guy is madness on the court, and no one can defeat him, and they really have high hopes for him being like a tennis champ. Yeah, he's on. The colors are kind of bad on here, but yeah, it's a red clay tennis court. This is a toy. This is if you're upgrading yourself from the little wheel that you're playing with. This is a water bottle. The wheels are made out of little pieces of sandal that they've cut into circles, and then they've used a variety of sticks and strings to do it. And so here you got kind of the kids that are playing with it, and it's just the coolest thing. You saw them made out of sardine cans, little choo-choo trains they make out of sardine cans, and you know, stuff like that. It's pretty cool, you know. Here's another guy doing the auctioneer business with the clothes from China. Another Chinese bike, non-fallen. Okay. So this is crazy. So this is me right here. we were coming down this from this market.
Clarification.
Well, all right, fine. Come on, I was getting pretty dark, wasn't I? So there were just a bunch of people hanging around here, and we didn't know what was going on. But apparently, they had just finished some like music production, and the lady that's smiling over on the right here had come up to me, and she just thrust these two like rattles into my hand, and she says, shake them. And I'm like, all right. And so I just start shaking like this. And well, next thing I know, all the musicians start joining in and doing this clapping and dancing and everything. And, here I am just like the one white guy just like, sweet, let's do this. It was a ton of fun. So yeah, I was looking for sandals. I had trouble finding those sometimes.
Back to those Cuba?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. All from China. Big truckloads. Here's peppers. Delish. This is black peppercorn, which is actually native to Africa. Bet you didn't know that. This kid's eating a carrot. Yeah, I like them. This is one of his buddies. Yeah. This is one of Guy's buddies. He was just cruising down the street, just kicking it with his guitar and just looking really cool. This was someone selling little peas. Using rusted little, these are, condensed milk cans to measure them. You had small, medium, large for different prices, quantities. This was kind of our typical breakfast scene, and actually I'd say pretty much every day. So what you had was eggs. They would serve you eggs kind of in an omelet style, and you could get it on a baguette or not. And you could get it with that baguette covered in mayonnaise that was never refrigerated or not. And you could get a tea. Yeah, I don't know. I told that to my parents. They're like, you have to refrigerate mayonnaise. It's raw eggs. I don't know. So, yeah, I don't know. So,
in India, I don't think you refrigerate.
Yeah.
Yeah, in India you don't know.
Yeah, it depends. I don't know. So they would also serve you either tea or Nescafe or Ovaltine, all of which were some hot water, a gargantuan amount of condensed milk, and then a little spoonful of one of those three powders. So it really didn't matter which one you got; they all tasted the same. It was condensed milk. Yes, it was instant coffee. It absolutely was. And hey, I got into it. Like I could hang with it. But it was really just the condensed milk that I was tasting. So here's Guy hanging out with his breakfast sandwich. So this was another one of those bush taxis. So these are the cars that they're cramming all those people into, and they're just kind of held together by strings. And the rides are long, the roads are non-existent, as you can see. And actually on this one, we've turned off at the moment, but the road was under construction for a long time, and got into an interesting conversation with the people about what was going on. And it turns out that they're hiring in external companies to rebuild the roads and help make them more efficient. And once again, it's China that's doing it. And so it's interesting what they say about the way that China's doing this, that they're importing not just the know-how and like the management, but the tools and the labor and the materials. So they're bringing everything, building the whole road, which is really cool because the people benefit in the long term because they have a road, but kind of not cool because they don't get any of the knowledge passed down on how to do this efficiently and quickly. And so so it's interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see kind of what China's interest is in doing this. If it's for oil resources or other just kind of plans as far as investment in the countries. But this was pretty consistent that you would see these Chinese workforces, and then the Africans would just be benefiting in the long term from the road only. Oh, and it was also interesting talking with a guy in one of the bush taxis. And that was the cool thing about the bush taxis is that because everyone's forced together, everyone's hip to hip, and often like butt cheek on leg kind of thing. Like you were kind of forced in these conversations of like politics and religion and history and things like this, whether you wanted to talk about it or not. And so one guy was really kind of explaining the road situation, and he was saying, and so I asked him like, so well, how do you feel about the Chinese influence here? He's like, well, it's really cool in the terms of the things that we get as far as roads and stuff. He's like, but there's things that I really don't like. He said in Limbe a fish used to cost 500 CFA, which is about $1. He says now it costs 2,000, about $4, because they've taken all the fish. They also brought fishing boats when they came into these roads, and now there are no fish left, so the price has increased. So it's kind of the good and the bad, it seems. Food-oo or voodoo? Yeah, these are the roots from the cassava plant that are dried and then turned into fufu. Again, lots of dirty roads, and I think that African humor is about the same as American. In French, that says "wash me." Yeah, I thought that's pretty cool. This is some guys building a home. This is a mask maker. This is in Fumban, so we've gone even farther north. This is kind of a Muslim-dominated town. There was a big actual jihad in Cameroon a number of years ago that really pushed a big Muslim influence up into the north, and so I guess from the north into the slightly south of north. And this was the mask maker's office, and just pretty cool stuff that he was working on in there.
What are the masks used for?
Masks are used in ritual dances, ceremonies, all sorts of things. So I saw a few of these, and I generally didn't bring the camera out for the really intense ones. I'll see if I can. I'll mention. Remind me when we get to Togo, but I'll mention one later. But they got just downright fascinating at times. And here is a smaller one. I actually bought one of the bigger ones too, but this I found was interesting. They call this a passport. And in French, passport, and I'm like, well, why do you call it a passport? And they say, well, because sometimes you don't have enough room in your bag to take a big one when you're traveling. So when you're traveling, you take a little one like your passport, and you can still do the ceremony, even though it's not a big mask like that. I thought that was kind of interesting. Exactly, travel mask. Here's the mask maker himself modeling one of the bigger ones. And so here's kind of your village homes. So this is kind of what things look like outside of the city. Everything's made of concrete. Yeah, mud and concrete type of things, yeah. This is some kids playing football at sunset in between a couple houses.
Were there many animals?
I saw very few dogs until Sierra Leone. There were a lot of, people ate a lot of chickens, goats, sheep, that kind of thing. I didn't see a lot of them, except they'd be schlepped around in the vehicles a lot. So yeah, there were animals around, not pets for sure.
Pass the mask around.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. Here's a nicer home. See, I don't just take pictures of the poor people. This is food. This is called BH or BH, which is short for beignet haricot, which means beignets and beans. And so these are like fried donut balls with non-sweet, just kind of plain, and red beans. And I have to say, it was really delicious. It was one of my favorite meals out there. These are peanuts just sold as snacks. Little kids would sell these, for just a couple cents for a little serving of peanuts. Hanging out in Fumban. He's starting to get the idea, so now he's hanging out and showing me how he can cruise in a junked-out car. Evening time. Here's another one of our breakfasts. This guy's got a little street side cart that he's making our eggs in. I don't know why it was called Prison's Mess, and it was right next to the school, the elementary school, so all the little kids were hanging out there. I thought it was a cool scene. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the beverages you find out there are predominantly Coca-Cola, Guinness beer, and then a few locally made beers. I want to say Star. Oh man, I'm starting to forget already. We'll see billboards eventually, and then a couple German beers as well for some reason.
What do you do for water? Is it just bottled water?
Always bottled, yeah. I just like this lady's eyes. And they're probably not healthy, but they're just kind of cool looking, I think. Loading up a car with as much as you can carry. This is when Guy was really starting to get it. So this kid changes out clutches on cars, and so he's like, well, so how do you change out a clutch, and how does that work? And the types of questions that I generally ask, and so it was kind of cool getting into a conversation with this guy here. And here's Guy working his magic. He had seen this woman, and so so first he does the sign, that she's a curvy girl, and then he goes after her, and he comes back later with a cell phone number, and she never called. This was the Sultan's palace. His family has been ruling Fumban since the 1300s, and this is just his palace. He has harems along the sides and two long buildings that are essentially entire families, where the Sultan is, of course, the father, and then he's got dozens of children to each wife. And so I asked, so how does he choose a new wife? And they say, well, he just goes to the market, and when he sees one, he just says, I want that wife. And I say, well, does she have any choice in the matter? And no, that's just how it goes. And so, I don't know, I found it was a really kind of disconcerting feeling, I felt, just kind of, knowing that someone could have that kind of...
Is he...
Yeah.
Is he the ruler of the area?
Yeah, of this, kind of larger village area, maybe a district kind of thing, yeah.
And it's hereditary?
Say again? Hereditary, yeah, yeah. And so there were the wall leading in was interesting, kind of timeline painted all along on the way in of like each sultan and like how it was passed down from family to family, and actually a lot of like murders and thefts and things that kind of went on in between. There was actually one woman that was sultan for all of I'd say about 6 months, and then she was killed and another guy took over. And, like, that's just how it goes.
And for Cameroon as a whole, like, is it a democracy?
Yes, it is. There is a president that like the day after I left, decided that he wanted to rewrite the constitution so that he could have unlimited terms, and that of course led into uproar and turmoil. And so I got out just in time for, for things to get really ugly. And it was interesting too because when I'm hanging out here, I met this guy named Jean Daniel who was really depressed because his father had just died of, I want to say, like polio or something like that, and then he himself was having trouble finding work, and he's a smart guy, and I think he's I can't remember now what, but is somewhat technology related, and he's fluent in French, and he's just like and in English, and he's conveying to me like the difficulty of his life, and he's looking at me and just saying just how fortunate I am, and how that I'm kind of just in such a lucky position, and well, I don't know, it felt like kind of not fair because I'm just kind of born into the situation in the world that we're in here, and like I'm very, very thankful for all the opportunities that I have and like the life that I get to live. But it's not easy all the time, and then I kind of felt self-conscious of the things that I was born with, and then when I saw this, I thought about, well, this guy was kind of born into a situation too, and just kind of just the differences of the opportunities that we're each born into. And Jean Daniel, who's a really smart guy, but in a really bad position in his life, the Sultan, who is probably just a jerk and gets to just pick any chick out of the market that he wants, and then me with my life. So I just found that kind of a disconcerting day, so I kind of realized those three different disparities. So we challenged a couple guys in the street to a game of what they call baby foot or little foot. This is table soccer. So this is the girl that initially hooked me up with the whole family that led to Guy. So we eventually crossed paths with her again. She's half Cameroonian, and so she goes out there from time to time. Definitely my benefactor on this trip. This was a really interesting thing. So we're hanging out on a bus waiting for it to fill. It was actually one of those smaller vans. When it filled, they just decided to take us off and put us on a large bus and make us wait another couple hours to fill that one. So that was very pleasant. It's very hot and uncomfortable as we're sitting on there, and there's this scene being played out in front as every local that pulls up in a taxi or whatever to get on one of these buses is being fought over to be the passenger on any bus waiting to depart. And so these guys are, I think, paid by the guys that are running the bush taxis to fill their cars, and the competition has gotten so fierce that what's going on in this scene is there's someone in the middle of that that's getting yanked in all directions. I saw one woman's bag get absolutely shredded and all her stuff go flying, and she just walked away and left. She's like, screw it, I don't need to get on a bus if it's going to be like this, and she left. And like, it was just violent and like ugly, and like, I don't know why it's got to resort to that just to get someone onto a bus, but I don't know, that's how they roll. So this was in 2001. There was a volcano out here in southern Cameroon. Why is this moving so slow? That you can actually see on the satellite. And so in the picture that I'll go back to in a second, I believe this is Mount Cameroon if I remember right. And so we are right here where this lava flow came down to the road. And so this is Mr. Elvis, this is Guy, this is Guy's brother, and I forget who this guy is. But we hung out for a day and went out into the far villages, and we went up on the mountain for a second, so we took this group photo. But it's pretty crazy. I mean, if you look, and you can see it, I think maybe even better from here than when you're actually on it, like it took out a giant swath of their banana business just by that volcano there, and it took out the road that was everyone's access along the coast to get back into the city.
So the road's still not repaired?
No, they fixed it now, and it's crazy because like it goes right over the lava flow and just keeps on going. So this is out in the little villages, and this was another one of Elvis's ideas. And so this little place, he said that he and his wife come to from time to time just to go buy fish. He said these guys have the best fish, and it's this little town of like 50 people. And so we went out there and hung out for a little bit, just getting some pictures. Elvis was nuts for this lady. He sees her down at the river, and she gets this bucket full of water, and she puts it up on her head, and he goes, "Now that is an African woman. You can see how strong she is. She has all that water on her head." And to him, like that was just the pinnacle of beauty. And I just think it's interesting as you go culture to culture, like what things it is that people find beautiful about each other. And Elvis thought that strong women that could carry a lot of water, that was his thing.
And a baby.
And a baby, absolutely, yeah. Yes, the baby is tied tightly. You can see the little feet sticking out, and this is just another piece of cloth like her clothing is made of that strap the baby to her back there. So this kid, similar to what Elvis had showed me about the cars going to to Nigeria. These are boats that are going to Nigeria. And so you probably have a fair amount more of illicit substances and people being transported by these boats, but they're going from this pin here out across the border out into Nigeria and back and forth. And so again, they take these boats, load them up with inhuman amounts of stuff, and take them back and forth all day long between the border. They had lots of really interesting things written on the boats. This one says, "Jesus is the winner, Holy Christ fire." Not sure what that means.
The Holy Ghost.
Oh, maybe it is. Holy Ghost fire? Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess you're right, yeah. Here's Elvis choosing a braised fish for me. This was the best food in Africa, period. These are, they just take a fish, slice some slits in it, throw it down on the fire. First they rub some crazy hot spices into it and throw it down on the fire. And then they give it to you with like a little pile of pressed chilies, and you just eat the whole thing by your hand, and it's super hot and it burns your fingers when you start eating it, but it's just delicious. And so now, going into this, I was pretty squeamish about fish, and now I can just eat any part of a fish at any time. It doesn't matter. And on the ground here, this is a little, this was a bag of water. So they sell 1 liter, I think it's 1 liter, bags of water. That's kind of your cheapest way of getting safe water while you're out there. Here's more of those boats. We got the Jesus Foundation, Time Will Tell. I don't know what some of these other ones say.
Are they really religious?
Yeah, so there's been, for hundreds of years now, Christian missionaries cruising around in there, so they've definitely made it very, very religious out there. And it's an interesting combination because as you get to to Benin and Togo, where voodoo is prevalent, it's a mixture. There'll be devout Christians and devout voodoo practitioners at the same time. They'll do both and believe that that's totally chill. So you go to Nigeria because of money. It was interesting talking with Elvis about Nigeria. So as you look at the places I went to, I skipped it, and so he said, "Well, so why did you skip Nigeria?" I said, "Well, because whenever I think of Nigeria, I just think of scams, like those emails that we get." And he's like, "Oh, 419." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's what it's called, right?" He says, "Well, yeah." He says, "The truth is that they're really clever, and they do scam you a lot in Nigeria, so you got to watch out for that." And this was corroborated by everyone I talked with out there. He said, "And as a traveler, it's particularly dangerous." I said, "Well, why is that?" He says, "Well, especially for you as a Caucasian." He says, "Because they're smarter than you think." He says, "You as a traveler, you might come to a place like this with, let's say, you've got your day's cash in your wallet, but maybe you're crafty and you've got a money belt too." He says, "They know that. And they know that maybe you've even got a credit card, and they don't want that. They don't want your credit card, they don't want your traveler's checks, they don't want your money wallet, they don't want your real wallet, they don't want your luggage, they want you. They're going to take you and they're going to put you in a decent hotel, but they're not going to let you leave until your parents wire them $1 million through Western Union. They will hold you for ransom. That's why you don't want to travel to Nigeria." So, duly noted. But this is how you could get there if you want to do it the illegal way. This is at a restaurant there. I don't know. I don't know what was coming soon, but don't ask it now. I thought that was kind of funny. And here's Mr. Elvis. He's just finished a meal, so he's very happy. So he's doing a little dance. Yep. And this was our last morning back in Yongkong Somba. We had gone out to the discos that night and had a very, very late night, and so we all just kind of spent the day just chilling on the bed and relaxing. So this is kind of, I think this may be the last, that's the last picture from Cameroon. So with that, we'll move on to Benin.
Do they all speak English as well?
It's a mix. It's mostly French, but yeah, particularly with Guy, his English was good enough. Janine's English was pretty good. So yeah, with the guys that you were seeing in that picture there, and Elvis's English is great. He sent me an email just the other day, and he's just hilarious. He's like, "So tonight I need to go and get a beer," and in parentheses he says, "I'm going to have a Beaufort lager, and I need to drink this quickly to quench my taste." He says, "All right, Elvis, you enjoy that." So now I've skipped Nigeria and flown here into Benin. Internet will catch up with me. We're in Cotonou, and this was. In my guidebook, it was listed as like this city is nuts. It's just this, massive humanity and pollution and insanity. And so I was really kind of nervous going into it. But when I kind of woke up, I got there in the nighttime and woke up in the morning and started walking along. It wasn't that bad, and I realized why was because I was staying over here, and so I just was kind of taking the main drag in towards the market, which is where that blue thing is. You'll see it in a minute. So out here, it's just kind of I don't know, it's just kind of your African city. But then as you get closer and closer to the market, you can see it just gets a lot more chaotic and dense. And this must have been taken in the wee morning hours because this is nothing. What it actually looked like is this. And it was just tons and tons of motorcycles and people and pollution and chaos, and like what it felt like as I walked approaching it, it felt like I heard like it sounded like the sound of like giant gears turning, like this big grumbling sound. As I finally got there, it actually felt like I was being like pulled into the mesh of two gears moving, and I just kind of moved with the flow of it, and then got spit out the other side, and it suddenly quieted down again. And then it's like, oh, that's kind of cool. So I went back and just went through the gears again. And so these are the middle of the gears here. And so these guys with the yellow jerseys, these are what are called zemijan, and that means in one of the tribal languages, it means like travel fast or something like that. And so what they do is these are the guys that you pay a nickel and they'll take you around town, it's your taxi kind of thing. And so in this country, it's actually pretty handy because they wear a jersey, and so you know who you're dealing with, and you're not just getting some guy on the street. This is in the middle of all that chaos. This enormous truck is moving through all these people with all that stuff, and that guy hanging out on top. And this is kind of the density that it was feeling like at all times in the center there. And so what I was adjacent to was, I think, the second largest open air market. No. We'll get to the second largest open air market later. But this was the market that we were in. And it was actually crazy. I went and got lost in here, and as it was getting dark, I was like, I don't know how to find my way out or how to find my way back to the hotel. I'm like, dude, this is awesome. I'll just get a zemijan. There's one or two of these guys, pulling through like the crowds of a market. I'm like, I'll just hire one of these guys, and he'll take me back to my hotel. And I picked the guy, and he saw that he had a Caucasian, and this was going to be exciting for him. He's like, yeah, I'll take you back. And so he sits me on the back of the bike, revs the engine as loud as he can, just starts laying on the horn, and starts going, woohoo! And just starts gunning it through the market, and everyone's jumping out of the way and screaming and yelling, and he is just laughing and having a great time as I'm holding on my dear life, and I'm like in French, doucement, just gently, and he's just cruising, and he's just laughing and laughing. And eventually, he took me easily, like, I saw it the other day, like, he took me way out here before we realized that we were nowhere near my hotel, which was way back over here. And so I eventually just like pointed at a place, and that's it. He took me and dropped me off. I said goodbye and like hired another guy to take me back to town. That's just how you kind of got to work it out there. So this is a little girl helping her mom do dishes in the side of all that chaos in the city there. Okay, voodoo or foodoo? I'm hearing both. This is voodoo. Benin is I think the world's largest practitioner of voodoo. Voodoo is actually a monotheistic religion, which I found kind of interesting. There's this like androgynous spirit that created the earth, kind of similar to the monotheistic religions of the West. Yet the whole story is totally different than ours, and everyone practices it, and it was kind of like formally recognized and legalized a couple decades ago, and so as a result, people are very open about practicing it. It's very different than our religions in a lot of the ways or a lot of their rituals. What you see here are a couple metal pieces that are used for dancing. I actually have a couple of them here. These are little bells that the people go like this with when they're doing their ceremonial dances. So you can pass that around and look at them. There's a lot of cowrie shells and just other little dried, crazy-looking things that they use when they're doing these rituals as well. This is also voodoo. I don't know what these are or what they're used for, but this was also in that same person's little stall there. Same with these things. These are little tins full of mascara that are used for kind of getting gussied up for your voodoo rituals. These, I don't think are actually voodoo. If you guys have ever seen the game, it's like, I think it's like 10 little cups in a piece of wood. These are the, what's that? Yes, mancala, yeah. And so these are the nuts that they use in that game. Does anyone understand French? Or do you need to? Don't pee here. That's $1 fine and a very graphic picture in case you're illiterate. Voodoo or foodoo? No, I warned you ahead of time. I said there's going to be nudity too. Voodoo or foodoo? Yeah, definitely voodoo. You got animal skins and horns and dead birds, and if you can imagine the worst smell that you've ever smelled, multiply that a few times. It's really, really bad. And we haven't even got to the thick of it yet. So here we are down on the coast, and this was, whoops, going the wrong way. This was one of a number of slave trading outposts. So if I remember right, we're at Porto Novo. And so you have a lot of kind of colonial architecture going on out here, and this was a building that was locked up. I thought that was an interesting picture. This is old colonial stuff, kind of falling apart. Here's my dinner one night. This is rice with some really hot spices in it and an egg. Yeah, that's a hard-boiled egg. Yeah, the ball in the middle there. Yeah, they don't really work on presentation out there. Oh, there's beans in there too. I like beans. This kid was just kind of bored. Cool colors. All the buildings just kind of have the red dirt from the roads all just kind of working their way up the side. Here I was walking along one day and like these I crossed paths with these two guys multiple times. Eventually they just said, "You are walking and we are walking. Maybe we should walk together." I said, "All right, let's walk together." And we walked for just a short distance where they came across a guy, and they were both wearing their kind of African pajama outfits. And they came across another guy and they talked with him in their tribal language. And they turned to me and they're like, "Okay, we're gonna follow this guy." And I'm like, "Okay, now we've got three guys and I don't know who this guy is. Where are we going?" And we came to this building here that was actually inside a fence with like more like lions and stuff painted on it. And I was like I don't know what we're doing. I don't know what Hunan, Evis, who, all that kind of stuff means. So I'm just kind of like, I'm not too concerned, but a little suspicious as they take me to this building. And they have me take my shoes off. And the other guys are doing it first. So I'm just kind of following. They take shoes off and take shirts off. And then they give us this like mentholated like water that we kind of like wash ourselves with. And I said, okay, we're doing some kind of ritual here, but I don't know what. And it was inside this building. It's too dark on this monitor, so you can't really see very well. But you've got, this is a room with kind of concrete walls, and here's a half wall here, and a bench along the end here. And it's about 2 million degrees in there, and we go in there topless, and the guy that they had met on the street goes back behind the wall, and he's sitting there, and I hear this like, crack, 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 and I'm like trying to get a good view, but the other guys are closer, and I finally see he's like cracking this stone on another stone, and he's sitting on a little wooden stool, and there's something back there behind that wall that I can't see, and they're speaking in tribal languages, and they're just kind of talking and stuff, and then eventually they say, okay, well you got to give this guy some money, and they each give some money, and I give a little money, and then they give us some cola nuts, and so we take the cola nuts and says, okay, now whisper, your secret desires to this cola nut. Okay, so my secret desire was just that I could get out of here alive. And so the other guys, they did the same and handed it. And so I just watch as they do this in tribal languages. And the one guy has his little discussion, and I'm watching his expression as he's hearing what he's being told, and his chin starts to quiver, and tears start to roll down. He's getting some bad news, and I don't know what it is. And then the next guy, he gets his news, and everything's kind of kosher. And then they tell me, and it's like, Craig, what have I signed up for here? And so my news was the guy that was doing this, who turns out is a voodoo practitioner called a fa. This is kind of like your father or whatever. And so he's kind of running the fortune-telling thing here. And he knew that my fortune was, in fact, to get out of here alive. He kind of read my mind, I guess. And so he says, everything's going to be fine. You're going to be safe on this trip, but you have to do this voodoo ritual in order to ensure that. I'm like, okay. And really what it amounted to was going to the village, buying some food and candy and stuff like that, and handing it out to people like over the course of the day. And he says, if you do that, then everything's gonna be fine. Okay. Well, so on the way out, I asked the guy like, well, so what was in your fortune, and what was so that was making this guy so upset? And apparently, the fortune teller told him that that he's a businessman, and that in his business, one person's been cheating him and has been taking a fair amount of money from him already, and has plans in the works to imminently like absolutely screw him. And so he needs to do something about this like now, or like he's in big trouble. And so I don't know who he's doing business with or what it is, but apparently this was a pretty moving statement to hear. Selling bananas. This is black market fuel. This is how you buy your gasoline to get from point A to point B. This right here is your additive, I don't know, to keep the NOx out or something like that. But you buy it in glass bottles, and from time to time they explode. It's kind of dangerous. And here's who sells you your gasoline. And here's your colonial architecture. Voodoo dolls. And so I've got two of them sitting here on the table too, if you guys want to take a look at them. They're not the voodoo dolls that you imagine, like where you stick pins in them and like kill your enemies or something. But what they do with them is they dress them up like you see there, and you get one male and one female, and you put this in front of your home, and it's a way of kind of like protecting and giving good fortune for your family. This is back in Cotonou at the machine again. Tribal scarring. This was in the city. This wasn't even out in the bush, and you could see really intense scarring like this. And every tribe has their own, and there are some majorities and minorities. And this one I never saw one quite like this, since this guy I'm assuming was a minority. But usually you saw like one or two scars in each cheek. And if you look at the mask here that I bought, he's got three scars on each cheek. That's representing the tribe that he was from. So this is cool. I found out on the coast little kids that were fishermen and just chatting it up. And this is so nice that I could speak a little bit of French. I could just chat it up with them and like say, well, hey, can I go for a ride with you on your pirogue here? And they'd be like, yeah, come along. And so, so this little kid took me for a ride. And so we're cruising through, and their job all day long is to fish and feed their families. And they catch them and they just toss them in the bottom here. So you got a couple of little fish floating along with a sandal there as we're moving through the bushes. White flags indicate that you're a voodoo practitioner. That's outside someone's home. The hairdos out there are totally cool. This is a voodoo like little altar, I guess. This is kind of like within a small cluster of homes in a village. This is where they would do their little rituals. And these are actually things that you put on. So these are costumes that would be used in voodoo dances. Here's a little girl practicing to be a mom. She's got her little puppy dog, in her cloth, like her mom would carry her. Any idea why the chickens are pink? Voodoo, foodoo, what do you think? Voodoo, yeah. What's that? What'd you say? No. My theory was that this was so you knew whose chickens were whose, but it's wrong. It's actually to prevent birds of prey from swooping down and taking them. When the colors are wrong, like you wouldn't want to eat like an orange banana, right? It just wouldn't look right. So this is the same idea, and it's apparently very effective.
What are they using?
This one got its leg stuck in a little piece of string, like here. And so at first I didn't know what they were doing, but the mother and child are about to leave it, but I freed this one so it could go and catch up a moment later.
But what do they use to take them?
Oh, what do they use? Oh, I don't know, some sort of dye, yeah. More of this kind of colonial scene there. Vespas are huge out there, and being a scooter fan, I thought that was really cool. Kids chilling. Here's a giant Muslim temple.
How old do you think that
Yeah, I don't know. This is advertising out there, and it's crazy. I was just in U Village, and there's a store there that has someone going out to West Africa and buying these signs, and they're selling them in this boutique in U Village right now. Just a business opportunity never crossed my mind, but this guy's selling phone cards, and I don't know why he's in blackface. Is kind of what it appears to be. I think that's kind of weird, but he's selling cell phone cards. They don't have landlines very often out there, but they all have cell phones. This is so part of the voodoo thing. Okay, part of the slavery. We got to talk slavery for a second. I didn't know going into this that the slaves that we speak of in America were brought not really to the United States, but to the Americas, which was the Caribbean. And so this is why you have black people in Jamaica, and this is why Bob Marley spoke of slavery and things like that, and the whole Buffalo Soldier thing. Like he was speaking about how people were brought from Africa to the Caribbean, and then eventually up to the United States for the slavery we know. I think the first slaves were brought to Virginia, and there were like 5 of them, and it was just kind of some business deal. It was like, all right, and it just kind of started rolling from there. The way that the people got the slaves, though, wasn't that the white people like came to Africa and just started capturing everyone they could. They'd set up forts on the coast and then make deals with people that lived on the coast and have them go out into the bush, capture people, bring them to them, and then they would ship them out. So we'll get in when we get to Ghana. You'll see how they did that and where they kept the slaves. But here, one of the ways that people were able to protect themselves from being captured as slaves, in this town anyway, was that the tribe doing the capturing had this superstition that they weren't allowed to go on water. And so this other village figures out, okay, well, if we build our village on the water, well, then we'll be safe there. And they've just stayed there ever since. That was hundreds of years ago. So this guy's taking me out in his canoe out towards that village. And we're passing the fisherman. You got the cell tower in the background, yet you're fishing with nets. This is how it goes. This guy's pulling crabs out of the bottom. And here's Gambia, the stilt village. And so hundreds of years later, they just mashed enough kind of stilts together and dirt together that they made a village on the water, and that protected them from being captured as slaves. And there were some really, really aggressive kids there that just were really into the fact that there was a Caucasian there. And so my way of having fun with these kids was we all played like we knew how to do karate. So that's what those kids do. And this is also this. I also had this group. It was funny. Like I had this swarm of like 50 kids around me, and like and the guy that had taken me in on the canoe like kind of clapped like, "Hey, let's go," and I just kind of clapped back. I was like, "Yeah," and so all the kids imitated me and they clapped. And I'm like, oh boy, this will be interesting. It's like clap again, and they all clap again. I'm like, okay, all right, what can we do with this? So I just started clapping a rhythm, and all the kids started clapping a rhythm. I was like, okay, hold that. And then what did I do? I had some of the kids start going, ooh, 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 ooh. And so like half the kids start doing this, and the other kids are clapping. I got some kids snapping, and then eventually we laid down the whole rhythm line to Michael Jackson's Billie Jean, and like we just rocked it. It was so fun. And the guy on the canoe was just like, "What are you doing, man?" But it was a ton of fun. Here's some blue crabs that they're catching near the Still Village there. Here he is right there. This is another guy's boat. I don't think these were actually in use on the village, but they were just cool looking. Here's another voodoo facility. Yeah, when you got to get things from point A to point B, that's how you do it. I think these are empty. I hope they are. I don't know how else you would ride a bike with all that kind of weight on it. He's going. That's the back of his head there. Good question, though. This kid was pretty hip. He was cruising around. Transistor radios are really big in Africa, particularly in Sierra Leone, but this is still in Benin. So I was asking my dad, I was like, so when you were a kid, did you cruise around with a transistor? And he's like, actually, there's one day where I had my transistor and I had a little headphone, and I thought I was pretty hot stuff cruising around the city wearing one of those. And well, that's what kids do these days in Africa. They don't have iPods yet. This was at the electrician's shop. This kid wanted to show me how he gives a haircut. And these kids were apprentices at the electrician's shop. These are the canoes that they paddle in. It's made out of trees, yeah. I don't know why they're crooked like that. I know that the ones in Venice, Italy, are curved intentionally so that they could just use the stick on one side, and they paddle these with the stick that's laying in there. So it could be that's what they do. And the stick is actually the center of the giant palm fronds, so they just strip all the leaves off it, but use that core piece. And so they look like giant eyelashes because they're tapered and kind of curved a bit. They're really cool. And so this is one of the roads that they took the slaves down. And they marched them in chains with, they said sometimes like padlocks around their lips, and right on down to the water to stick them in the boats. And this was also where I had the bumblebee story where I thought that kids were kind of putting me into a booby trap as I was walking down that road. As they were kind of shouting at me and kind of trying to usher me to the side of the road, and I didn't understand why, and I was just kind of suspicious. And this kid just comes running out of the bushes at me with his shirt pulled over his head like Cornholio, and he's like screaming and yelling, and I see he's flailing his arms. There's this giant black cloud behind him, and like it was just this sudden realization, African bees, I'm going to die. And like I just kind of start running, and all the kids start running, and this kid just starts running, and he just disappears down the road, and the whole cloud follows him. And eventually he came back later, and he was okay, and all the kids were trying to get me to do was move out of the way of the bees because the guy was about to come. But yeah, I was kind of nervous for a second there. So this is where the slaves were deported. This is beautiful beach. It was just the most gorgeous spot with pretty ugly history. Here's what life is like inside a bush taxi. You've got, for some reason, only 2 people in front, which is kind of under capacity. You've got 3 people, it looks like, hip to hip in the seat in front of me, and they've all got children on their laps. And so this is one of them looking back at me. And here's a detail of the car just to let you know that they are in tip-top condition. So here was kind of a cool situation. I met a guy at another, or the hotelier at another town, and he said when you get to, and I was going to this lake in the middle of nowhere. He says when you get there, ask for this hotel. It's a buddy of mine. Like it's a good place. All right, cool. I like the guy that told me this, so I just kind of went. So here's the car out in front. It's on this awful dirt road, and here's the hotel inside, and it's actually pretty nice. Like there are nicer hotels in Africa, but this one was pretty nice. And like I thought this was the entirety of the hotel. I knew that there was a lake somewhere nearby, but I didn't know where it was. And so I put my stuff in my room, and then I went and I needed to ask for a map because or just someone to tell me where something was because there was nothing around. This is just like on the road in the middle of nothing in the bush. And so I went down. So I went and I found a guy that was on the property. He says, "Okay, well come with me. We'll go down and talk to the owner." And so we start going down this trail, and it's like, whoa, this is actually kind of nice. And it's got these big bamboo things, and these are local pots. You see people cooking and stuff in these. And so they kind of turned this into a spot here. And there's gardens all along the way. And as it turns out, there's a French-Canadian guy, a French guy that's working here. And he's just finished his MBA. And what he had done as part of his MBA, it was an international MBA, what he did for part of it was work and live at this hotel, helping develop it for a semester or something. And he made buddies with the owner there, and he had this grand vision of taking this hotel and having it be self-sufficient. He's not like, he wasn't speaking in terms of green or sustainability or anything. This was just kind of the notion that he had. And he said, so I wanted to plant a garden so that we could have all of our own food grown for this hotel here. And all of these things that are used to decorate it, these are all things that are bought from the villagers in this village that they're creating for this hotel. And so this is the big kind of like dinner place and stuff that's on the water right here, where you can still see all the people doing their daily fishing, because like this isn't a developed area. This is in the middle of nowhere. And so every morning I'd sit out here and have my breakfast as these guys were pulling their breakfast in from the water. It was really an amazingly beautiful place. And so the guy that was telling me all this, his name was Rome. And so he said, after like we kind of talked, well, the way I got into the conversation, I said, well, so why are you here? You know, like, what are you doing? And he says, well, I work here now. I don't know how you would say it in English. I guess I'm kind of a project manager. I'm like, okay, I understand project management. It's kind of similar to my job in ways. And so he's like, really? And so we get to talking about how he manages X and how I manage mine. And it was just an interesting conversation. And then we got into tourism, because obviously that's something near and dear to my heart. And we're very much on the same page about all this stuff. He's like, okay, we're going for a ride. So we got in the white car that you saw in a few pictures ago, and he takes me to the next little cluster of houses a little ways down. He's helping these guys in their little tiny village develop themselves. They needed a new well, so he kind of talked with them about how to decide where to put the well. And so here's this guy digging the well using just a little tin bowl. This is how they're doing it. These right here are called agouti, or in English, grass cutters. These are rodents of unusual size that are food. And so they have a whole like area where they're raising these guys, and he kind of coaxed them and coached them through building like this facility to grow these guys and eat them. So he took me further down the road, and he took me to this like grove where there were these kids hunting for crabs in this grove full of what are these called? Mangroves. And so these are these crazy trees that grow from the bottom and the top. It's like billions of fingers coming up from the ground, and then little things coming from the top. And these little kids are kind of sneaking through the bushes trying to capture crabs for their dinner. And so Rome's idea is he and the hotel owner own this property now, and so he wants to build a couple little like cabana type of things in there, elevated off the ground, not taking down any of the trees, but kind of living within all of this, and having that as another option for kind of place for a tourist to stay.
Is he a native, did you say?
No, he's French.
Oh, he's French.
But he's moving there now. And so here, this is Rome, and he's showing me the plot where he's clearing out a little bit of land to build a home. And so it's obviously going to be a pretty decent home. And he turned to me at one point, and he was like, so what do you want to do with your future? And I'm like, well, I don't know. I'm still trying to figure it out. And he goes, I'm like, what about you? He says, well, I want a house and a wife and children. I'm doing it here. This is how I'm doing it. And he's got a point. He's the king of this village right now. He and Theo, who own that hotel, and Theo, I said, so how did Theo start up this hotel? He said, one sack of concrete at a time. He was a poor villager like everyone else, but he saved. And he put all his money slowly to build the hotel that you see, and then he was smart enough to call in expertise, and so now Rome and him are partners in doing this, and Rome's going to set up his future here on this lake in the middle of Africa. And this is what he gets to see every morning. And if the timing is right, and it was just coincidence for me, you happen to get there at the big voodoo dance-off. And so everyone from around the lake came to the property right next door to the hotel to have this giant voodoo dance competition. And so every village was represented, and this guy was kind of one of the ringleaders, and he's got the palm wine in this flask here, and your requisite animal bones and stuff. And the dancing and the music was absolute insanity and chaos. It was everything that you could ever imagine from like an African dance-off. This is a giant umbrella being spun with voodoo dolls on top of it. And here, so there was kind of like early day dancing, and then all the chiefs from all the villages were brought out on boats. And so on each boat, they've got like a little crew of like their first mates and stuff that are going to transport them from the boat to the land. And these are all kind of the maidens in waiting or whatever to help kind of greet them on the land. And so here's one of the chiefs getting out of the boat with all his regalia, and all the music is so loud, and all the drumming and all the dancing. And that's what it was like. And here I was, the one white guy in the midst of all this. It was pretty crazy. And everyone had their turn to kind of do their dance and show off. And it was a real honor to be a drummer in these things. And they said that you have to like do certain things and follow certain rituals. And if you're too young or not authorized to touch the drums, and you touch the drums, like you're gonna die. And in the midst of all that noise, this little kid was just, both of these kids were just passed out, tied to the backs of their moms. I don't know how they do it. They got pretty intense. Lots of drinking, lots of carrying on. These are noisemakers made out of bottle caps in this guy's ankle. So with a couple of the people from the hotel, we went down to the local market day. So this was just kind of like all the villages meet for the big market extravaganza. And I had a girlfriend once tell me that beauty is painful. And so here's a lady getting, I think her hair dyed. She's got a plate full of black dye there to make herself look a little younger. But yeah, it was a pretty wild market experience there. This guy's got a mirror and a lot of dried fish. I didn't know why. It was cool. Pour the bucket. Sometimes you only need half a windshield, but I think he chose the wrong half. All right, voodoo or voodoo? This one's easy, right? So here's where the pictures get a little more graphic, if I remember right. Yeah, there's a couple here. So the rituals are done with a lot of dead animal parts. So you've got your voodoo dolls and your feathers and your skulls of various animals, and they're ranged from everything from birds to primates. And we'll get more to that in Togo, but here's kind of just a little glimpse of what that's all about. Bringing in the bananas. So Rome decided to take me and these were a couple of his buddies that were working in the capital city. They'd come out for the weekend, take us for a little motorcycle ride, and so we cruised from village to village. Here you've got your Chinese work crew building the road. It was interesting. They had in the process cut the water line to the hotel that you saw, and so for the past year and for the unforeseen future until the road's complete, every night they're going to the nearest spring, which is actually a big enough spring that it waters most of the country. So whenever you bought a bottle of water, it was Positome, and we're on Positome River, and this is the Positome spring that we would go to. So every night at about 2 in the morning, he would round up all the local kids he could, take a pickup truck down to the spring, fill up giant 50-gallon tubs full of water, bring them back to the hotel, carry them and put them in this giant tank that actually had a little pressurizer and would send the water into the hotel rooms. And so, I don't know, just interesting labor that he had to go through in order to do it. But so it's interesting, as he's kind of developing this, and he has all these ideas for this hotel on the lake, his activities, he said he doesn't want people bringing in jet skis and doing things like that. At the most, he's going to allow, windsurfing and stuff like that. But really, they've got the local-made canoes to do on the lake and things like that. And so the cool thing is, for once, like for the first time in history, there's actually going to be a road here. And so tourists will actually be able to access this place pretty reasonably. And I think that he's got the right idea for how to set tourism with the right tone in this place.
How many guests were at the hotel when you were there?
It wasn't that many. I'd say maybe 15, something like that. Most of which were like French people working in the capital that were also friends of Rome's. But the day I got there, like a big school group had just left, so people are staying there, yeah. So Rome was just interested in kind of the daily travails of people, and so we stopped off at this little quarry where people were digging. And so he just started quizzing them, just asking, okay, well, so what's going on here? He found out that they make, at best, about 1,000 CFA per day, which is about $2, getting baskets of these stones. They do it by chipping out the dirt from a quarry like this, sifting it with water, dumping it into baskets, and then throwing it through a sieve like that. And so the end result is baskets of rocks, and they get paid very little money, about $300 per bucket, so less than $1 per bucket. And most people do about 1,000 CFA in a day, and a very good person will do 10 buckets in a day. So that's like, what, $3 or $5, something like that. So it kind of gives you an idea of what people are working with there. I don't remember. I don't know. Whatever they need rocks for. This right here is what the rat looks like when you cook it. And thankfully, I didn't get a piece with the claw on it. She said that the girl who gave it to me said, well, you could have the piece with the hand, and no, I'll take this part, thanks. It was clear that it was related to porcupines and that angle of rodents, because the fur was still intact, and it was really coarse and spiky, and it tasted like beef jerky. It was kind of tough, and Africans everywhere will say that they think we're crazy that we like tender meat. I think they would like really be sickened by like a nice tender chicken breast. Like they say we like our meat from the bush. We like it tough and difficult because that's life in Africa. Now you know. So this is us doing our little motorcycle trip. It was fun for me because now I'm getting a lot more confident in motorcycles. In the China trip, I felt like I was the one that was struggling to keep up, but this time it was this guy that had never ridden on one before, so he was going through all the same things that I had to learn a little while ago. So it was just kind of interesting to see it from another perspective. But here's your dirt roads in the middle of nowhere. And prayer changes things. They are very religious. It's kind of a general store. So as a lot of you know, I don't do the chilling out at the beach thing, but the guys at the hotel that you saw last, they said, no, you've got to check out this place. This is actually pretty cool. And so this is Grand Popo, and this is it. Not the hotel. This is from the hotel itself. But this is the property. And I was just curious because I kind of knew that we were in the middle of nowhere, and kind of knew that this was a pretty nice beach, especially for people that like beaches. And so I was kind of curious, like, what the traffic was on this. So I kept tally. It was one child, one woman with a basket on her head, and one goat over the course of about 3 hours of the evening. Like, that was it. No one's here. And it's not like it's inaccessible. This is on the ocean right at the southern coast of Benin. And that's what it looks like. There's no one there. There's no one picking up the garbage like there are on Mexican beaches, but, you know, it was pretty nice, and I was hanging out with the crowds. And this is it. This is the whole hotel. This is owned by a guy named Gildas. This is him. And he's a Rastafarian, and so appropriately, this is a very Rastafarian hotel. And all it is about, I want to say, 8 or 10 rooms, and it's just these little concrete structures like this. Each one has the portrait of a Rastafarian, or actually a reggae kind of deity. You know, you got Bob and Peter and all the other, you know, important Rasta guys on there. And then there's very nice art, and you've got kind of the code of, you know, being a Rasta here, you know, thou shalt not kind of things. It's got, and this is his bar where he mixes his own drinks of, like, he'll take a fresh coconut and squeeze in a fresh pineapple and throw in some rum, and you drink it out of the coconut. He employs 2 guys, one that does all the cooking and one that does all the cleaning. And the cooking consists of whatever food they can pull out of the ocean that day, and it's spectacularly prepared and delicious. Gildas was a taxi driver. First is John, so he drove the motorcycles. But again, like the guy back at the other hotel, he had enough sense to save. And he was really poor when he was born, but he saved a little bit by little bit. And then eventually he bought a car, and he started being a car John. And then he kind of parlayed that into being kind of like a tourist guide. And so he painted up his car in Rasta colors, and whenever you'd see a tourist, he would say, well, let me show you around town. You pay me a couple bucks more. And so he started doing that, and he saved and saved, one sack of concrete at a time, and he opened up this hotel. It's got one toilet that's impeccably clean, and one shower that's impeccably clean, and the rooms are just like straw kind of mattresses on the floor with, you know, clean sheets on them. And it was a really pleasant and peaceful place, and I actually spent some time sitting on the sand, chilling in the beach, because it was that cool. And this I can do, you know. This was a good scene, and it was just really neat to see another person that kind of had their own way. This is his job now, and I think it was a $4,500 investment to build the whole property there. And this is his life. He lives there, and he plays reggae music 24 hours a day at incredible volumes because he is just so passionate about it, and he is so just excited about it. He was dancing all day and all night, just, you know, Jah Rastafari all night long. And so it was a really neat place to be. Here's another view of the room. Here's your bush taxi scene again. I took this one because if you're caught in the middle seat up front, the gear shift goes in between your legs, and your knee becomes the driver's armrest. Africa is backcountry. You saw them everywhere. No, they do, but they're also really big on trees, yeah. And at night times in places like this, when they would go out for their evening hunts, it was these giant clouds that would like lift up into the sky and you know, descend on a village. All right, what do you think these are? Yeah. These, I think, are the closest. I think this is where we get the idea of shrunken heads from. They're not human heads, but they sure look like them. And these chickens are alive, but they're just hanging on by a thread. This is in a room that's at about 1 billion degrees, and the chickens are just routinely just picked up and thrown from one end of the room to the other as they, you know, whenever they start to kind of squawk a little bit. And these are, you know, kind of bowls with these shrunken head looking things in it. That's definitely part of the the voodoo ceremony. So what we had done, okay, I'd met a girl that's a French Canadian that's working in a hospital out here as a physical therapist, and so she and I cruised around a bit, and we met. She was like, she had heard my story about the fortune teller. She's like, okay, well, let's go see another one. She's like, I've never done it. She's obviously fluent in French, and so it was really easy for her to get around. And so she knew someone that knew someone, and eventually we get to this fortune teller. So first thing, he takes us to this room where there's been a major sacrifice taking place. It's a small concrete room. It's essentially like a closet, and a giant calabash in the front that's full of blood, and all of the walls are sprayed in blood. And there's little like chickens, barely living, tossed here and there, and all sorts of other little nuts and berries and stuff sprinkled around. And apparently this was a fertility ceremony that a couple had come from another area, and it was unclear. I think they may have even been foreigners that came there and that were unable to have a baby. And so he said, okay, well, if we go through this ritual, you'll be able to have a baby. And sure enough, they went home and they did. But the other part of the voodoo is that when you do that, you have to then have like a closing ceremony, or the whole thing goes wrong. And so maybe the baby dies or something. So this was the evidence of, not this one, but I didn't get a picture of it, but the big blood spattered room was the evidence of the closing ceremony. Now, while we were in there, my friend Marie is the French-Canadian girl. She had a Dutch friend that came along with us for this. This girl had pulled out her camera and snapped a picture of the big bloody scene. And that was while the voodoo guy wasn't looking. And then suddenly he turned around and saw her putting away the camera. He was pretty upset. So we'll get back to what happened with that in a minute. So we got our fortunes told in this room with the voodoo guy sitting on this bench here and throwing little pieces of metal and nuts and things on the floor to read our fortune. And I forget if I actually have a photo of him doing that in here or not. So this is we got banished to his house for a few minutes while he decided, after the photo stunt, while he decided whether he even wanted to read our fortunes. He went and did some business while he sat in his living room. And so this is the Dutch girl that took the picture, and this is my friend Marie. And he had this enormous collection of antiquated stereo and fax machines and stuff like that none of them worked. I don't know why he had them. Okay, so I didn't actually get a picture of him doing the work, but so this was the after effect of the photo. Was he kind of got over it for a while, read us all our fortunes. So I'll tell you what my fortune was really quick. This is interesting. He channeled all sorts of things about me, and he got my mother's spirit here and everything. And he says, "You have a sister," and he was right. I have a sister, and he said, "Well, you both kind of do business." And okay, well, in ways, yeah. He said, "Well," he says, "you've had a lot of success and a lot of business acumen so far." But your sister, she's up and coming. And in fact, she's taking all of your power away from you. So unless you do a voodoo ceremony, you're going to lose all of your business acumen, and you're going to fail in your career. And well, that's a pretty big deal. And I'm sure Shilpa, as my manager at the time, would have wanted me to pursue this voodoo ceremony, right?
I would pay for it.
So yeah.
Say,
So
can I expense the voodoo?
I said, okay, well, so what will this
Personal
entail?
development.
Yeah.
Career development.
Career development, right, absolutely. This is training, I don't know. So I said, okay, well, so what is it? He says, we have to do 2 ceremonies. First thing you have to do, get red roses, get a calabash, all right? This is just like a hollowed out gourd. You have to get some special water, I forget what it was, some kind of liquid, rose water or something. You have to then take the rose petals, put them in the water, place the petals on your body, do this 2 times. I'm like, that's it? Sure, yeah, hook me up. Let's go buy some roses and do this. And he says, no, that's only ritual number 1. Okay, what's ritual number 2? He says, okay, ritual number 2, you need to find a red goat. I didn't like where this is going. He says, you need to find 2 red roosters. You need to find 2 birds of flesh-eating birds, carrion birds. You have to kill the goat and pour the blood into a calabash. You have to then put the 2 roosters in there as well. You're going to have to do, and he started rattling off a few more ceremonies involving, seeds and stones and things like this, and I just kind of had to draw the line and I think I'm going to take a risk. So perhaps at my career's peril, I decided not to do this, but I remember where this guy's located, so if things really go bad, maybe I can expense this and head out there. And I think, and the final thing was that I had to bury all of this at a crossroads in Africa, and so I guess I'm at a crossroads of my career right now. As we were leaving, he got pretty upset again about the whole incident with the photo that she took. So he said, okay, so you're going to have to make that up to me. And so we're kind of like, all right, well, what can we do for the guy? Well, maybe if we give him a souvenir, he'll chill out about things. And so we each gave him a pen, and he was pretty excited about that. And then Marie just turns to me and says, give him a picture. I'm like, I don't have a Polaroid here. Like, what do you want me to do? She's like, he wants a picture of you. He's saying give him a picture. And I'm like, wait a minute. I had a picture. of my friend from the motorcycle trip. I don't know why, but he gave me his passport picture. He had an extra one. So I told the priest that was me, because all white people look the same to them. And so I said, yeah, so here, go ahead, do me a favor, do a couple spells on that one. Let's see what happens. So here's the priest posing with the picture of my friend Mike and a dead chicken and a couple of pens that we gave him. And I got to send a great email to Mike saying, well, there's a priest, voodoo priest out there in Africa that's pissed off at you right now, and who knows what he's going to do with your picture. Mike thought that was pretty cool. So here we are cruising around in the villages out there. The used clothing from America gets sent by charities out there. So that's why this kid's wearing an American Pie t-shirt and giving Murray a little cruise on his bicycle. These are those birds that live in the round nests again. Pretty cool. There was a storm about to come. That's why the clouds were like that in here too. And this guy, he was a voodoo guy that Marie always saw in town, and she was like, he's always wearing purple, and he's always got this smile. So I always see him. I don't know what his deal is. He doesn't speak French, only the tribal languages, but he was a nice guy. Came over and kind of said hi. This is a meal to go. I ate it back in my hotel that night. And this is suya, so it's that grilled meat served to me in a little piece of brown paper wrapped up. And I don't know, it doesn't look appealing, but it was a great meal. I was very happy. Okay, so here we get back to the voodoo scene. This one, there's no voodoo or voodoo game. So now that you know kind of some of the ceremonies, now you know how these animals could be incorporated. They're usually killed and used in various rituals. This is a python, and they had pythons and baskets.
Sweating in the picture.
Shilpa, it's outside of this little hut. It's about 120 degrees,
Oh, it
and
has
inside.
nothing to do with the python.
No, pythons are constrictors, and so I knew that they don't bite, that I was probably going to be okay, and that these guys could wrestle it off in worst case scenario. Yeah. I know that Ananth and Ryan and Blake probably might not take so kindly to this guy, but yeah,
I don't think I hold a constrictor open.
How do you feel now, right? This is not Photoshop, I promise. It was actually kind of fun. And so here you've got a box full of snake heads. These are all decapitated snakes left in the sun to dry for a while. These are all chameleons, like you saw on Marie's finger a couple of shots earlier. These are all dried birds. You can kind of make out the face of one there. Here's your chameleons. And I don't know, I mean, it's a judgment call. It's personal values. Like, this is their religion. Everyone is free to have their religious beliefs. That's kind of... No, this is for sacrificial purposes.
It's a strong smell.
It's so strong that you'll see I bought a few things here, and I brought them home. And when I got to the hotel that night, they smelled so bad that I asked the guy if I could put them outside, and if he could kind of keep an eye on them, and he was okay with that, and he kind of chuckled, yeah, they kind of stink, When I got them back the next day, they smelled no better, and so I put them inside a plastic bag that they'd given me, and then a Ziploc bag, and then another Ziploc bag, and then another Ziploc bag, and I zipped it all up and then threw it in my backpack. And when I came home, I took them out of the Ziploc bag in late April, and I've kept them out on the back deck, and I've sprayed them with Lysol every couple days, hoping to just kill it. And this morning as I was leaving, I thought, well, maybe I could bring these in, and I took another sniff, and no, it's not there yet. It's going to be a long time before these things smell like it. I don't know, stuffed it in my bag. Well, you'll see what I bought. So you've got every animal imagined, and some are endangered. I'm not enough of an animalologist to know which ones are and which ones aren't. But you've got animals with pretty unique beaks and stuff like that. And so some of these I do know from my reading that are pretty rare. This is a basket full of birds. You've got everything from giant bulls and crocodiles and donkeys on down to our friends. In the primate field. And that's kind of, if you guys think it's kind of important to know. More snake heads on sticks. More birds.
Snake head on a stick, one of the things about that?
Maybe. Primate skulls and hedgehogs. These are our brethren.
Are those human skulls?
No, primates.
So do they just find them in nature, or do they actually...
That's the sad thing, is that they actually hunt them down. Yeah. And Marie, being a physical therapist, it was really interesting talking with her about the whole voodoo scene. So she works in a hospital where it's often people's second resort or last resort. So she was telling stories of people that would get in a car accident and maybe kind of break their arm or something, or break the scapula or something, and then go to a voodoo practitioner to have it fixed, where the solution would be bludgeoning him with a club, cutting open his skin and rubbing ashes into it, and doing this repeatedly for months, so that by the time he was brought to her, the bones have all been jiggled around to places that they'll never heal properly, and now the guy's really, in a bad situation. And so there were all sorts of stories like this, but there were also the stories where voodoo couldn't explain, or where nothing but voodoo could explain what was going on. There was a girl that came in who, her legs were fused like this, and she was maybe 8 years old. She'd walked normally her entire life until one night she was walking down a trail in the darkness to her house, and felt like a spirit moved through there and went to bed, and when she woke up in the morning, she couldn't move her legs from this position. And then by the time they brought her to the voodoo guy, the skin had fused. And she described it like chewing gum, where you can kind of pull it and it's like skin like that. And she then went to the physical therapist, and everyone at the hospital said, there's nothing we can do about this. This is voodoo. So you're going to have to go and find out. And so the voodoo practitioners, they all say, well, someone put a curse on you, and so in order to remove this, what you're going to have to do is find the person that performed the curse, and then find out from them who actually cursed you, and then work it out with them, or you're going to be like this for the rest of your life. How else do you explain that? I don't know. Hedgehogs. So this was an interesting moment. This is a little baby playing naked in the dirt, as they often do out there. Yet this baby is at that voodoo supply store. And so what she's holding in her hand there is parts of a dead bird that she's pulling apart in front of her. And that's really creepy and gross, isn't it? That's about the most disgusting thing I can think of. And what she's actually doing is taking the pieces of paper on the right there and making like little burritos out of like dead bird parts, and like just kind of doing that. And so I walked up, and there's a really interesting phenomenon that's funny at times and really kind of not funny most of the time. And it's that for whatever reason, children, upon seeing a white person for the first time, get really spooked. And so it'll happen that like I'll just see a child, and that child is suddenly like, wait a minute, you're not like me, and like scream bloody murder, run behind their parents, and like freak out. There was this great moment in Sierra Leone where there was my buddy Aaron and I. There were two of us, and this little kid saw me and was like, and like scrambled around her mother and went to the other side and looked up and saw Aaron and just they're everywhere. And so what happened in this situation is this little baby was just doing her thing, just pulling apart the pieces of bird, and as soon as she got a look at me, as soon as she sees the white person, now she's scared, and she's screaming bloody murder. So, it's not the dead birds that creep her out, it's the white person. So, I don't know, little bit of perspective there. And this is her home. This is where she's hanging out. What was that? Well, I know Aaron. Aaron freaked him out too. Their religion. So what we bought, and this is Marie doing the negotiation, which of course drew everyone's attention. It was really kind of fun. We bought these things that would, they were kind of telling us what each of these things were used for, and when they got to one that was like, well, this one's for safety and travel, it's like, well, that's what we're doing, so let's get some of those. And so the thing that we ended up buying is this, is one of them. And what it is a little clay. It kind of reminds me of like a pipe. It's got a little bowl in it, and it's got these feathers and like waxy substance around it. It smells like utter hell. And it's got another bowl on this side that points down. And they say you have to fill it full of water, take a sip of it, and then spit that water out, and then you'll be protected on your trip. We're like, okay, cool, we'll buy a couple of those. And they're like, okay, but you have to do the water here. And it's like, really? Here? Like, we haven't been able to sanitize this thing yet. And they're like, here. And like, well, all right, when in Rome. So we put it full of water, and so here's Marie taking her sieve, and you can see the guy in the background there making sure that she does it. And, well, we got back alive, right? So I guess it works.
Is that water?
Yeah, that's the water coming out, yeah. Thanks. No, neither of us were. It was just kind of like, all right, we did it, right? Yeah, you did it, okay. This is back in one of the villages. Here, this is just decrepit buildings. When we get to Sierra Leone, it's because of war. This is someone selling motorcycle wheels. More black market fuel. More kids with wheels. It's just so cool. These kids are playing Xbox. I don't know how it got there, and they're powering it off of a gasoline generator that's outside this hut. and it's actually funny too if you notice they're not playing with Xbox controllers. They've got PlayStation controllers that they somehow wired into it. And it was just like video games in any other place. Like, here we are, like, we could have been freaks. We are freaks off the street. Two white people walk into this hut. Like, we just opened the door and came on in. It said Julia said games on the wall. And so we just kind of opened the door and walked on in, and no one even looked up from the video game and noticed. Like everywhere I went, people were just like, oh, white person, and coming to the video game place, no one looked up from the TV. And of course, the game they're playing is football, soccer, right? That's what they care about out there. So I thought that was pretty cool. Water is always transported by hand. So this girl's getting the fill up. She's showing the eye makeup that I mentioned in the voodoo hut a while ago. So they take this black powder and put it on their eyes, and it looks so pretty.
Only women who carry things on their head. I've only always seen pictures.
Good question. I think it may be. Let's keep that in mind as we go through, because I think it may be. What'd you say? Ooh. I got a pair of my own African PJs, and so here they are ironing them. I know that I've seen irons like this before. I can't remember if it's India or China. Is it India? Okay. And what they do is they're iron, and they fill them full of charcoals, and they let them burn outside their house, and then it gets nice and hot, and then they use it to iron their clothes.
What's the handle made of?
I think it was metal too, but I think maybe it was just far enough away that it didn't get hot. I forget. I don't know. But yeah. So this is my PJs. Oh, the modern ones. In India, maybe these are.
No, it looks just like this, except they add rubber and
Oh, really? This went out for, I don't do the safari thing, and my reason is that it just, I don't know, I can see the same animals in the zoo, and like, they'll probably be more doing what I want them to do in the zoo than, at least as much so than in normal life, and plus, I just find people more interesting. So Marie said, well, I know this guide that'll take you out to see hippopotami out on this river in the middle of nowhere, so maybe you should check it out. I haven't done it, but I think it's going to be really cool to do it. All right. So this is Dawn out at a village on the way out to the hippopotami. And it was the most stunning drive ever. These dirt roads, little villages at sunrise, and the sky's starting to turn that really deep blue, and the bats are leaving the sky, and the big birds are starting to get up and do their thing, and you can just hear all the cicadas around and stuff. And for whatever reason, there were a lot of trees being burned there, and they burned in kind of interesting ways. I thought that was kind of cool. But we got out to the river where it was absolutely gorgeous, and there was one guy kind of doing his fishing. And there was, in fact, a hippopotamus. And this is the result of hanging out for about a good hour or two, because this is all hippopotamuses do. They just sit there in the water, and like they kind of dunk their head under, and they stay there for a couple minutes, and they come out a few feet, downstream from that, and they go, and they chill. And it's like, I don't know. That's why I don't do safari. People are a little more cool than that, I think. And then, of course, as soon as we get there and there's one hippopotamus there, the guide's like, okay, now you saw hippopotamus, now we go. It's like, oh, man, see, that's why. Like, I don't like guides either, because they're always, they've seen this a million times. This is my first time. I'm paying you money to go see this hippopotamus. I'm going to stand here and watch him breathe for a few minutes. Thank you. And so he got a flat tire, I think, 3 different times on the way back. So this is on the way back down the trail. And
Is that what you traveled
yeah, that's how we got out to the river. And this is one of the villages we stopped at, and one of his flat tires. And this guy came up to me and he asked if I wanted to buy this. I'm pretty sure it's a deer. I don't know what I would do with it. And this is the baobab tree. These are native and I think only grow in Africa, and they're absolutely enormous. And they kind of look like they're upside down, like the roots are in the air, and the tree trunk kind of goes down into the earth. And they have these crazy fruits, and I think this one, maybe there's one in there. They hang from long stems, and they're really big and they're really heavy, and I can't imagine that anyone would survive if one of these fell on them. These are actually pretty small ones. And when someone fed me the berries from one, it was actually kind of tasty, a little chalky but tasty. And so they use them for shelter, for wood, for lumber, for food. It's like they revere them out there.
They're important too. They're really good for like woodworking. They're incredibly dense. You run through a table saw table with it. Like, you don't have to like throw the
blade away. Wow. This was in the village, just a little kid playing peekaboo through the wall with me. If you're going to go build a church, you take the wood yourself by hand.
Oh, go back to that. He's got it on his head. Who asked about the
Aha,
picture?
you're right. There's one. All right, let's keep a tally.
Everybody else is on the shoulder.
And you can't say that men don't do work. They're building a church.
The shoulders don't count.
No, this guy in the yellow shirt. He's got it on his head.
Someone better come back with a bird. It'd just be one gun,
That
not
just
so
seems
many
like
guns.
a bit easier.
Yeah, this guy, and this guy, and that guy, and that guy. Right? Fair
She didn't say
enough.
guys didn't do work, she said women work harder.
Okay, okay. If you don't make a water bottle toy, you make one out of a horn. So these people are making fufu out of cassava. So they're pounding those roots, those white roots that you saw earlier, and they're doing it in a rhythm with these giant sticks. And it's in a hollowed out portion of a palm tree that they kind of build into a pestle, and or is it mortar? I forget which one's which. And they do the mortar part with the other part. And of course, they've all got their babies hanging off their back. And this is my backpack getting loaded into one of those bush taxis, just to kind of give you an idea of how it works. This is a big bag full of who knows what. Now we're at the border of Togo. So this is, so now we're, oh, come on, internet. So now we've gone all the way, come on. I'm recording the video here so I can show my family later, and I think that's why this is moving so slow.
The video is all recorded to memory, and we can save it out.
Yeah.
The longer you record,
The worse it's going to get.
What are you using to record?
Camtasia. It's the same thing they use in the usability lab.
Oh, wow.
All right, we'll come back to the map later. So I don't have that many pictures of Togo because it was really, in a lot of ways, very similar to Benin. They're parallel to each other. They're both very thin. I think they're like 60 kilometers wide or something like that. They're not huge. But here's some happy pigs rolling around in the mud. This kid was awesome. He had made a bow and arrow out of a stick, a piece of inner tube, and the tips of his arrows were little bottle caps. And he was a pretty crack shot with the thing. It was pretty cool. Here's kind of your village life. These are fresh mangoes, hanging from the trees, and the pineapples were ridiculous. The mangoes were so ridiculous. A workman's machete and water jug. You gotta move chairs. That's how you move chairs. So I met a couple of German guys as I was crossing the border, and so we hung out for a day or two. And these guys, I don't know, they were kind of new to the whole like Africa travel thing, and so like they just weren't kind of jumping in. And so I was just kind of doing my thing. I saw these guys, this guy selling these sticks here that are used for toothbrushes. And I have a little bundle of them here if you guys want to take a look. It's a really hard wood, and it takes a lot of working on it with your teeth to kind of get it to fray, but once it frays, then they scrub their teeth with it. And so I bought a bundle, and I passed them out to the guys, and they're like, really? And I'm like, yeah, that's what they're all doing. And they're like, all right. So we established what we have to do. We saw the locals then saw us do it, and they bought a bundle, and they're like, okay, here's how you do it. And the key part is looking cool. So here you have one of the German guys looking kind of cool, and then him looking a little cooler. But of course, the locals, they know how to do it the coolest. So yeah. So this is how you brush your teeth in Africa. You can also notice that he's got tribal scarring. So there's one on that side and two on that side. He was building the house. That's why he's wearing the construction hat. We went to the local championship football game, and this just felt like my high school football game, just a little bit different. And with everyone able to buy a beer or a soft drink there, and just like the rest of life, voodoo is pertinent in a soccer game. And so here we're just watching the game. You've got the favored team on this side and the non-favored team on this side, and the non-favored team was actually winning by 2 points, I believe, at this point. And everyone's screaming and shouting and running up and down and rubbing in each other's face. There's all sorts of drums being drummed and all sorts of chaos going on. And here's a guy getting painted up and shouting for his team, that kind of thing. And then something happened. And this was the exact moment, I just got lucky taking the shot, that something happened. This guy gets flipped into the sand, and the game is on hold for the next 15 minutes while there is all manner of arguing and cursing and screaming going on, and everyone in the crowd is upset, and everyone on the field is upset. And later on I asked the guy, well, what happened? He said, well, the team that's winning, the non-favorite team, they threw voodoo charms, and that's how they scored those goals. So they said that right at the moment when this happened and the game ended, or the game was on hold for a while, that someone had thrown a charm down, and someone from the other team saw it and called them out on it, and it turned into the big old fight. And, well, I don't know if they ever found the charm again once that happened, but that was the allegation, and that's why the game was on hold for a good while in the middle of this. So this I would see in a few hotels, and it was, so in French, is it, did someone flip? Yeah. Oh no, it says on the top, it says, and if he slept with your young girl, so why would you sleep with young girls? So essentially saying, and at the very bottom, it's time to stop these dangerous practices. And so I think what they're saying is that, and I didn't see, I don't think I saw any evidence of prostitution aside from these signs, but it obviously is out there. And so I think what they're trying to say is that, well, it could be your daughter that's doing that, so why would you be paying for that kind of thing? This is my friend Yvonne. She caught me because she was working. She's like I said earlier, what I call a call girl. She worked at a little call booth right across from the big Carrefour, the place where you would pick up all your bush taxes and stuff like that. And she was fluent in English, and so it was an easy conversation. And I had a fever that day, so I really didn't want to do anything except for sit there. So she said, "Sit underneath my umbrella, and I'll tell you all about my business." And so she is actually a college student. And she is employed by someone else who kind of put the shop together for her, and this is it. And so she told me all of kind of the startup costs to do this. And so for the umbrella that you see there, that's 15,000 CFA, so that's about $30. Her desk, to have someone build that and paint it, that's another $30. To have a phone, the black one that you see there, that one connects to any mobile phone line. So you can dial any mobile phone from that, as opposed to the white one on the left, which can only dial landlines. Both of these are using satellites, though, because they're wireless. And so the mobile phone one is $200, and the fixed phone is $80. The phone cards, as you see strung underneath the umbrella there, to get a big packet of those, you have to invest about 100,000 CFA, which is about $200, to get a good pile to then resell. And then she was kind of clever, and actually I guess everyone always did this. Along with doing the phone calls, she made her own little peanut brittle and sold those for, like a little nickel, as you're hanging out. And so particularly so this is her view, is the big Carrefour where everyone's loading up and always traveling. So you're getting in a car, you should make a phone call. You're getting out of a car, you need to make a phone call. So she said that this booth was incredibly profitable, and in general it's a pretty good business for people, but this one in particular was the right place to be. So that's how she's paying her way through college. Little evening football game. So I saw the cool sunset and thought this was a cool picture, so I took it. And as I'm doing this, as I mentioned before I started, it was really hard for me to take pictures in Africa, and you never knew. Some people thought it was neat, and some people would just get utterly infuriated by it. And so here I am in the darkness taking this picture, and I hear this little kid off to my side. And it's just this empty road with a little booth. And the little kid's going, tss, tss, tss. I take the picture, and I look over, and he's just kind of smiling at me. I'm like, what? I point at the camera like, "You want a picture?" And he's like, "Yeah, yeah." I'm like, "Okay." So I come over and I take the picture. And just as the shutter closed, I hear, "Oh," which is the African version of "hey," as his dad catches wind that I'm taking his picture. And so that's why the kid's looking to the side. He's going, and his dad comes running out at me, and he's like, in French, just a mile in there, and I can't understand it when you're going that fast. And in China, anyway, my way out of any situation where I was in trouble was, "I don't understand. I'm sorry. I don't understand. I'm sorry." And so I started in with this stuff, and he finally says in French, "Well, what language do you speak?" And he says, "Anglais," and I'm like, yeah, English. And he goes, "I'm going to take your photography, your camera, and I'm going to break it and throw it in the ditch." And he's just like, he asked me to take his picture. He's like, "I'm going to do it." And I just ran. I was out of there. I didn't know what he wanted from me. So you never knew.
You just run?
I just ran. I got the hell out of there. And as soon as I got back up to the street, so here we are facing the street, I took a left and got 3 houses down, and this lady's calling to me from her thing. She's, "Take my picture, take my picture." So you just couldn't win. You just couldn't win. This is the wallpaper inside my hotel. Top-notch facilities out there. And so it was really cool. Everywhere I went, I was able to communicate with people, at least through rudimentary French or through English, which was really cool 99% of the time. But sometimes there were people that, it just got old. So I found this restaurant. I was eating some fish, and this lady just wouldn't lay off. She wanted me to move her to America. She wanted me to. She's the chef at this restaurant. She wants to work at a restaurant in America, and she just was on and on and on about it. It's like, dude, I haven't eaten all day, and I just want to finish my fish here while I'm still hot. Can you just let me? And no, take my picture. Okay, take me to Africa. Or take me to America. I can't take you to America. Oh, come on. I need to go to America. I will be a chef there. And it's just it was hard. And then I got outside of there, and then this guy, he was doing the same thing. And it was here was the last moments of light. I really wanted to take a picture of this, which is an abandoned old train building where there's actually people living and sleeping on the roof of it. And so, this is the kind of thing that I travel for. These are the scenes that I want to go and see. And that guy's sitting there haranguing me the whole time saying, "Well, hold on, let me give you my phone number. I want you to call me when you get home." All right. This is one of the, so I came back the next morning to the train station. This is the family that lives there. This little girl. The boys, they were a lot of fun. They wanted to play all sorts of games because I could show them their picture on the digital, of course. And so they, okay, well, let's try things on our heads. Let's try this one. Just each of their expressions are so funny.
What was their reaction when you showed them?
Oh, it's ecstasy. Just, oh my God, oh my God. So here's kind of your typical village. Here's your vestiges of the colonial stuff. Kind of rotting old buildings. Kid picked me up and kind of walked me through town, and so here's, someone's shop. I don't know how it's standing upright. Graveyard. Hammer and anvil. So, I don't know, man. Love is such a beautiful thing that nobody can ever deny, no matter how it is conceived. They kind of look like siblings to me. They kind of look too little to be in love. It says the same thing in French in the bottom. I just don't know what this is all about. This is the decoration of my hotel. And this hotel was really awful because I still had a fever here. And so I've got a fever. I saw a weather report a few days before I got sick, and it was like and it was the evening before. It was tomorrow's weather report. It was classic, like out of the 70s. You remember in the news, like it was like kind of the cardboard thing behind the newscaster, and they had like little magnetized things that they would move around, and so it was just like that. And it's on the television of this hotel, and so it said. I forget what it is in Celsius, but it was 115 degrees, which is really hot for someone like me. And so that was going to be tomorrow's forecast. And when tomorrow came along, it was unquestionably one of the cooler days that I had experienced in a long time. So I don't know what I have been cruising around in. I don't take a thermometer because I don't want to know usually. But it was really hot most of the time. And so here I was faced with a situation of I've got a fever. I'm sleeping in a room that has a weak fan above me and then a bug net because malaria is rampant there. And I'm faced with being unable. I'm butt naked on top of the bed with no covers and just this net above me and a fan, and I'm still absolutely drenched in sweat. And now I'm faced with, okay, do I take off the net and get malaria just to get a night's sleep? In the end, I chose to get a night's sleep with the net off, and I didn't get malaria, thankfully. But it's an interesting thing to think about that there's a lot of NGOs that are trying to get nets out to countries in Africa right now, but there's practicalities in it. They get holes, they're uncomfortable, the air can't move inside them even though they're nets, and so it's just an interesting situation, I think.
Was it hot and humid, or was it more?
It depended on the places, but a lot of times it was really humid. I was accustomed to just being in wet clothing pretty much all the time.
Did you also were you bitten a lot, even though you didn't get malaria?
No, I wasn't really. Yeah, I'm pretty sure this one even shows up on TripAdvisor. Al Donald fast food. This is a knockoff of McDonald's. You take it off? Okay, thanks for coming.
Golden Arch.
Yep, the single arch. And this is the burger you get. Yeah, well, so I'm trying. No, it's just a single one. I was trying to understand. Okay, so is this? So I'm looking at the menu, and there were burgers and fries, and it was like one price. Then there was burgers and fries, and it was a slightly lower price. And I was like, okay, maybe that's the value meal. So I said burger, and I'm doing this all in French. I'm like, burger with fries? She said yes. I'm like, okay, I'll take that. And so she serves it to me with burger with the fries in the burger, and that's why. I don't know why that's cheaper, but that's how you do it.
One hand, man.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
What's the white stuff?
It was like gobs of mayonnaise. It was pretty gross. I'm not a mayonnaise fan. Right here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. They were really into wigs out there. This was not a flattering one, but I kind of thought it was a cool picture. So here we are down on the beach. This is right next to the border between Ghana and Togo. And so this is down the beach, and I got accosted by someone for taking this picture because these are the future soccer stars of Africa practicing, and they don't want their photos taken until they're famous. They feel that it will throw them off, and so okay, I won't do that. But I thought what it was there was a German and a French jetty that were remnants from the colonial period that were just kind of just scraps here that were slowly melting into the sea, and so I thought it was just kind of a cool place to take some pictures. I didn't even really care about the soccer players. I just wanted this stuff. Any idea what these guys are doing? That's what it looks like, but they're pulling fish out of the water. Yeah. Yeah. What did you say? Well, yeah. The nets are so big that they have to get huge crews, and it's really cool because they all do it with like songs and rhythm. So it's like they're singing, and then at the 4 beat they all pull, and then they do it again kind of thing.
It's funny they pull this way because in China they pull the boats, and and they're facing away, and they're pulling this way.
Makes a lot more
These
sense,
guys
yeah.
are pulling this way.
Yeah, you're right. That would make a lot more sense to go the other way, I think. Just along the beach there. And so the way that they keep the net from sliding back into the sea is they hook the end of it around a palm tree, and then so this is the effects of doing that for long enough. And you know, sometimes you just gotta carry a lot of things on your head, as well as.
Sure, that's empty, right?
Yeah, these are all empty because she's selling bags, but yeah, you gotta have a baby too.
That's not your luggage, right?
No. Here's a cool wig.
Oh, wow.
Kind of the bustle of the market. So this kid was really cool. He was actually a Nigerian that was moving on his way to Ghana, but hadn't made it yet, trying to seek his fortune. And he kind of told me the sob story. I listened to it, and I knew that I was near a really big and really dangerous market. And so I was like, all right, I'll hear your story. Let's hang out for a little while, and then if you'll go with me to the market, I'll buy you breakfast, kind of thing. And he was like, all right, you got a good deal there. And so we went to the market, and we ended up hanging out. And it turns out that, you know, I was kind of trained by the other Africans not to trust the Nigerians, but his story kind of started to make a lot of sense. It was to the point that I could tell he wasn't lying to me. And what he does is he repairs cell phones. And so he went into a lot of detail about how he does that. And so what we did is we cruised around in the market and then eventually throughout the whole city buying him. So what had happened, the reason why he didn't make it to Ghana was he had gotten ripped off in the middle of the night. So his whole bag full of stuff was taken. The market that I was speaking of is, as you can see, this is really densely populated. There's a lot of people here. And so it was all in this area here. And it was just like, they were like, foreigners don't go there. But I was like, all right, if I got a local kind of protecting me, I'll be all right. And so I was, and it was a pretty intense experience. We had breakfast inside this building, you know, more eggs and the condensed milk and that kind of thing. And then we went out and we started shopping for his stuff. And so just kind of, you know, to kind of give perspective into what an entrepreneur's life is like there. Over the course of that day, I paid 4,000 CFA, which is about $8, to buy him a soldering iron, a multimeter, so you can, you know, a voltage meter, a power socket so that he can plug like a power strip into another power strip, a single light bulb on a little plug so that he could have light while he's working at night, and a set of 6 specialty screwdrivers to open up cell phones. And so for $8, I made his life. And like now he can go back to work and he can get to Ghana and he can eventually feed his family and all this kind of stuff. And so that was his story, and also the last photo of Togo. And so here we are at 5. Oh shoot, we're already after 5. So maybe I should end here. We haven't gotten to Ghana yet, which is where you get into the slavery stuff, and I don't know. There's a lot of interesting stuff, but maybe we should end here, and I'll do another one. And I think my favorite part is Sierra Leone with all the diamond mining and stuff. So I definitely want to hold another session for that one. So maybe I'll do Ghana, Sierra Leone. All right. Sounds good.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for coming, guys.
Thanks, man.
Sure thing.
Good.